New South Wales is home to some of Australia's most iconic landmarks. Sydney's famous Harbour Bridge. The majestic sails of the city's Opera House are but the door to a state full of treasure. A state where passion drove our forefathers over the Blue Mountains in search of that most prized precious metal all those years ago. In recent times, that search for gold has revolved around just one mountain. Bathurst is home to the most important motor racing real estate in the country. 6 kilometres of public road that draws fans and racers from all over the globe. Fast corners, long straights, big drops. It's Australia's Le Mans and Nordschleife rolled into one. And the champions of those internationally revered racetracks have come to tame our mountain. Mount Panorama. It's an endurance race that tests the mettle of man and machine. For this is the 2012 Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour.
1 minute to the opening and pit exit. 1 minute.
Pump on in 30 seconds.
Contender crunch.
As the red goes out, that's where we go.
3, 2, 1, go.
Roger, off now.
It's the earliest start to the longest day of the year. It's race day at the Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour. Now behind me the teams have arrived and getting ready for the start of a really long day. There's a few bleary eyes as well for what is fast becoming the must-win GT Classic in this part of the world. This year's race is the 10th running of the Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour, and the entry list in the GT outright class has stepped up this year. Last year Audi took a 1-2 finish, but Chad Nolan, this year there's a familiar old foe who's turned up to challenge.
Yeah, Noons, all weekend here at Bathurst, the fans have been drawn to one car, the Mercedes AMG SLS. Run by a professional German team and in the hands of some good names that come to the mountain to topple the Audis. Throw in some fast Ferraris and Lamborghinis and a bunch of big international drivers, and this GT3 category sure is tough. But the good thing about this category is that there are a bunch of battles on track to watch.
The lower class battles of the race within a race, and team performance could determine the result. In Class B, that's where the Porsche GT3s will play. In Class C, the Lotus XCs will take on the might of the Nissan GTR. In Classes C and D, performance and production cars, in other words, the cars you drive around on the streets at home, and believe it or not, we even have a say at racing in Class I. So what are they racing for? Well, pride, determination, and to conquer the mountain and not be beaten by their fellow competitors.
That's right, Grant. Let's have a look at the Mount Panorama Circle. 6.213 kilometres, Garth Tander, a 3-time 1,000 winner, a 1-time 24-hour winner. You can't help but love this place.
Great bit of road, and all the international guys that are here this weekend are saying how much they love the run across the top of the mountain. You hear things like, it's like Laguna Seca, it's like the Nordschleife in Germany, it's like Spa in Belgium. It's a great bit of road. We love it, and they're loving it too.
And the best part is, it is all ours. There it is, the mountain, the site of today's race.
Bathurst is a place that's always been blessed with international flavour, and at this year's Armour All 12 Hour, we see the most international teams come to the mountain since it hosted a round of the World Touring Car Championship 25 years ago. So to celebrate that fact, we thought we'd get around the pits and ask the drivers to describe the track to us, but in their own words.
跟住咧去到頂咧，咁你落翻嚟㗎啦。咁你落翻喺個彎度落嚟嘅，I mean喺彎嗰時係好窄嘅。
Beginnen, dan ga je je weg naar beneden beginnen. Nou, dat is niet helemaal. Curbstones, dicht langs de buurt, geen uitloop. Gang rechts rein, leichtes Übersteuern mit dem Auto, hoch, Verplanung im Regen, aufpassen, dritte Gang, vierte Gang.
跟住你一跌落去，呢個彎係叫佢 dipper。
Vol gasbocht rechtsaf, waar we bijna 300 rijden. Links vollgenommen, runterbremsen, zweiter Gang ins Banking rein.
Well, I'm not sure about you guys at home, but I have no idea what they were talking about or understand any of that. But let's do a lap of the Audi R8. This is the last corner, coming under the start-finish line right here, pulling fourth gear. Very similar to a V8 supercar, but hard onto the brakes. Lucky we got the ABS, hook it in here. Very important corner to really get a good run up Mountain Straight. The Audi's only good for about 270. It's a little bit slower than the Ferrari, so you want to get a good exit. Coming up here, grabbing fifth gear. Again, very similar to a V8 supercar. A little bit bumpy, but as you come down into here, hard on the brakes. Go back a couple of gears, and these paddle shifts are bloody beautiful because it really makes it a lot easier for us to to get around it, but as we climb the mountain, this is the beginning of it. A little bit of a slow traffic here, just got to be a little bit careful into the cutting. Back down to second gear again, similar gearing to a V8 supercar, a little bit loose in the back. They're coming up here, grabbing third, flat through here. This is where the Audi really stretches its legs. Fantastic aero package, grabbing fourth, very similar again to a V8 supercar, but across the top of the mountain here, the Audi is 2 seconds a lap faster than a V8 supercar. So really for me, it's a fantastic opportunity to feel the aero. And Garth, you would sort of feel this going over Skyline here, quite aggressive on a V8 supercar, but again with the Audi, with the ABS and the ASR, it really makes it really nice through the dipper here, hard on the throttle, get all that power of the V10 down, coming down into Forest Elbow, again jumping on the brakes with confidence of the ABS, back to second, accelerating hard out of here. This is something again that the Audi has only got, it's only good for 270 kilometres an hour, so you want to use all that power you've got in comparison to a V8 supercar where you get about 296, 97 kilometres an hour, going over this peak in sixth gear, almost hard on the limiter, but again, you're just coming up into the slow traffic, got to be careful. Very nicely pointed out to the right-hand side, hard on the brakes, coming out of the chase here. Third gear, using all that V10 torque, coming out, grabbing fourth, using a little bit of the ripple strip, got to be careful. It's not as nice as a V8 supercar over that. And coming up to the last corner, hard on the brakes, second gear, get it down into the apex, hard on the throttle, little bit taily coming out, but under the start-finish line, completing a lap of Mount Panorama in an Audi R8.
And Craig Lowndes will be paired for the second year in a row with the reigning Australian GT champ Mark Eddy and Warren Luff. But the crews are moving out onto the grid, the cars are assembling. It is 6 a.m. in the morning. Boy, this is going to be a long day at the office, but it's going to be the cars in the outright class that will be contending for the win in 12 hours' time.
In 2011, Audi had free reign at Mount Panorama. With only the one Porsche posing any sort of threat, the R8s looked as if they could have driven in third gear all day and still recorded their perfect 1-2 finish. But the 12-hour in 2012 won't be the easy Sunday drive Audi had last year, as this time the competition in GT3 outright has stepped up, with 9 fast cars spanning 4 of the world's most prestigious names. By far the biggest and baddest of the overseas challenges comes from Mercedes. If you ever wondered how the automotive love child, the brutish American muscle car and a smooth, sexy European sports car would look, well, here it is, the AMG SLS, lovingly known as the Gullwing. Powered by a 6.3-litre V8 making over 550 horsepower, the Mercs have made a splash on the Australian GT series with Erebus Racing. With Peter Hackett at the wheel, they're the only team racing factory SLS AMGs outside of Europe.
The SLS is world-renowned for its gull-wing doors, and it only takes one quirk every now and again for a manufacturer to come up with that creates some mystique and some stigma, and it's got everything that a supercar needs.
Joining forces with Erebus for the weekend is German-based Black Diamond Racing, still running hot from their Dubai 24-hour win. With both cars teeming with driver talent, the most experienced of the lot is Rob Wilson. He's taken on the role of mentoring the other drivers, and considering his day job, he's the perfect man for the job.
The driver training became something of an obsession where I started doing this one-to-one stuff. That is, you would sit in the car with what you'd call a professional driver. It could be Formula 1 or 2 or GP2 or whatever the category was, and say, okay, well, there's half a second, listen here, let's get to work.
But with all the hype surrounding the dueling Germans, one team that shouldn't be overlooked is the Maranello Motorsports Ferrari. This Melbourne-based team took the 458 out for a few pre-event laps here around the mountain, and they set the quickest ever lap recorded here at Bathurst, not including that, of course, of the McLaren F1 car. They've also got a very good driver lineup. Check this out, some very good European Ferrari aces here in Simonsen and Farnbacher. They also have a couple of good local drivers too. But the contenders don't stop there. Let's add another Ferrari 458 with serious credentials to the mix. Malaysian-Singaporean team Clearwater Racing is on Oz for the first time. They have the reigning Asian GT3 champ in Mok Wek Sung at the wheel, along with last year's third-place getter Craig Baird and the only contracted Ferrari GT3 driver in the world with Irishman Matt Griffin.
It's awesome. I mean, it really is awesome. It's back to the kind of old-style circus that you have to give full commitment, but if you make a mistake, you get bitten hard, and we don't like these namby-pamby circuits with loads of run-off.
All in all, the GT3 outright class has 3 Audis, 2 Ferraris, 2 AMGs and 2 Lamborghinis. A massive list of talented drivers stretches across 5 continents and 12 different countries. So whichever team is ahead after the once-around-the-clock encounter will truly have earned the victory.
Well, the grid is a busy place to be. Michelin have Bibendum there, and of course Michelin provide the control tyre to the outright GT cars. Darryl O'Young from the Audi team, reigning champ, wishing Craig Baird all the best.
Everyone's good mates at the moment, but 12 hours' time, I'm not sure everyone's going to be quite as close.
The cars rolling up to take their spot on the grid. 25 cars will set off in a short amount of time, and we get this race underway. But how we got to this point in yesterday's qualifying was really quite interesting. The 90-minute qualifying session got underway at 8:15 a.m. with the aim of the big boys to keep under the 2-minute 8-second lap mark. There was no putting all the eggs in one basket. 3 drivers had to qualify, and the winning time was an aggregate of all of their fastest times. Craig Baird dropped sub 2 minutes 8 by accident after discovering the Italian telemetry counted up rather than down to the target time. So the Clearwater Ferrari was loaded with 50 kilograms extra for race day, while the official quickest time went to Alan Simonson in 2 minutes 8.22. 3 red flags slowed the session. The HSV crashing at McPhillamy Park, the tent Lotus at the cutting, and the daddy of them all, Ted Hughlin, in the Lamborghini at turn 1. Hughlin was fine, but the Lambo will need plenty of work if it's to race again. It was the number 1 Audi, though, that finished with the highest average, and despite Maranello Motorsport sending Bow and Simonson back out for session 2, they couldn't match the times. The Germans collecting the Armour All Pole Award and the cash, $5,000 for their team effort. Cars taking off now on the warm-up lap for the 10th running of the Armour All Bathurst 12-hour. Let's run you through the grid. And the reigning champ, Christopher Meese, will start in car number 1, the Audi. Alan Simonson alongside the Dane in the Ferrari. Craig Baird and David Russell on row 2. And in car 2, Garth, it's not Craig Lowndes starting, it's Warren Luff.
Well, 12-hour race, all about endurance, all about strategy, all about what drive you've got in the car at the end of the race when the money really counts. Top 10 heavily stacked with the outright GT3 cars. And as we move through the field, more and more of the production-based cars will be in the sort of the top 20, and then as the race goes on, looking to get themselves inside the top 10.
Interesting one, 14th on the grid is the Rob Thompson-owned Lotus with Christian Kleen. That's right, the ex-Formula One Austrian driver behind the wheel. His first start at Bathurst. There's a diesel-powered Say It, 22nd on the grid, just for something different. And the Falcon that was due to start 26th will not start. 2 of the drivers not qualifying fast enough. And, of course, Ted Hughlin's Lamborghini is done already.
Yeah, unfortunate for those guys. They thought they had a real crack at this race, but unfortunately that crash in qualifying took them out of the event.
So we're on our way to the bottom of Conrod Straight to kick off the start of a long day at the mountain. I hope we're juiced up. I hope we've got enough sugar, because it is a big way to start the motor racing season of 2012. Christopher Meese, the Phoenix Racing Run Audi R8 LMS, the team that won this race last year, will start us off. Simonson alongside. Away we go on the mountain, 12 hours ahead, and the GT cars are launching their way down to turn 1. And it's all about playing yourself in. Don't get carried away. We say it every year with this race, Garth, and someone proves us wrong.
That's right. It's important here just to get into the groove. Don't get carried away. It's dark, so there's different things going on. Vision's hard to see. When we lap some cars, the headlights in the rear vision mirror becomes a big problem. You see the Ferrari, Simonson already wanting to get himself to the front of the field.
There's no doubt that this Maranello Motorsport 458 is the fastest car here this weekend. He's looking to sprint early. The big question mark is, can the Ferrari last the distance? We know the Audi can.
Well, Ferrari, reliability has always been a bit of a problem for them in endurance racing. So this sprint early strategy is something that you wouldn't expect from the Ferrari, but certainly they want to press on. Just look how dark it is. Still very early in the morning, and headlights, yes, you can see a little bit in front, but further up the road, there's a lot of blind spots.
This is one of the Kiwi run Porsches. Scott O'Donnell behind the wheel to start off proceedings.
Picking your apexes here as we go up into the cutting. See, you can't even see the wall on the inside. That's your apex. That's what you're looking for. Hard to pick that sort of stuff up early in the day.
On board with Craig Baird, 3rd spot in the Clearwater Ferrari across the top. Lap 1 I like the light system inside.
No, he's not watching TV. That's the camera out the back that actually you can see. The wings on these GT3 cars are so big now that they use rear vision cameras to look out the back of the car.
Across the top for the first time, it's the Audi from the Ferrari. Jumping aboard the second of the Mercedes-Benz SLS GT3s. This is the Sean Paul Breslin driven car. Rob Wilson is part of the driver lineup. It's following the third Audi. This is the car from the United Autosport team that Mark Patterson, the South African-born but American domicile driver, is running as they turn their way down Conrod Straight for the first time. And that Merc sounds good.
Sounds great, doesn't it? And now we've been saying it's important to get easy way into it. Just get started, get nice and gentle, work your way into the race. But you see, just in front of that Audi, there's a great bit of track position. You can go get in front, do your own thing, keep the brakes cool, keep the engine cool. And it doesn't sound like it's important at this stage of the race, but it's important to get track position. Oh!
Audi off the road nearly. Patterson very nearly ended up in the grass. By the end of lap one, it is Audi and Ferrari clearing away. And Garth, we should point out there's a change in the regs from last year's race. There's no minimum number of pit stops that you have to make or gap between them. You do what you need to do to win this race.
Well, that makes strategy much more normal. Makes it's less artificially contaminated by having to do a certain amount of pit stops. Now it's a lot more about driving the car properly as a race car. Good fuel economy, managing the tyres, managing your drivers, working your way back from the 12-hour mark so you can start to work your strategy into the mid part of the race.
Up and over the crest of Mountain Straight. We're under Griffin's Bend, and the field will start to stretch out. Remember that there's a massive amount of cars, of manufacturers, of makes. This is a problem already. The Lotus in the lane. This is Adam Gowans, the former Aussie racing car champ, who is used to driving small cars, but he shouldn't be in pit lane right now.
Clearly a problem with it because they're not doing tyres, not doing fuel. They've got the laptop plugged in, so looking for a drama. Now this is incredibly competitive start of the race. Alan Simonson wants to get to the lead. He wants the front of the field. I'm not sure why. I'd be looking after that Ferrari a little more. We're even blocking now down the inside.
And sparks and blowing brake discs.
Cars bottoming out early in the run, so tyre pressures are still a little low. It's very, very cold here at Bathurst at the moment, so the tyres are still coming up. It means the ride heights are a little low. That's why you're seeing the sparks when the cars are hard on the brakes. It's actually the car hitting the ground.
It's like the Bathurst 12 lapper, not the 12 hour. These guys
not get the memo. No, it's for 12 hours, not 12 laps.
We write this memo every year, but no one reads it. Back on board with Craig Baird, and he's driven for this team before in Carrera Cup in Asia. Obviously not in a Porsche this weekend, moving across to this Ferrari 458, which is the latest generation of GT3 car to come from the Italian constructor. It's a pretty impressive bit of kit.
Oh, up the inside there. So Berto's taken his glow stick with him. He's got a light on the dash. That's so you can actually see the switches, because these cars, yes, they're GT3 cars, they're derived from road cars, but they don't have console lighting, they don't have all that stuff. So to find the switches you need to look for, Berto's taking a glow stick.
And the car that went past is Warren Luff on board, the number 2 Audi. These cars this year being run by Phoenix Racing. Last year they were run by Team Yost, but still very, very, very efficient, very organised, and certainly the team to beat.
Certainly are. They are running those Audis very low, though. You see then even Luffy get on the brakes and sparks coming off the car. You don't see that in the day, but early in the morning, great bit of vision.
Up the top of the mountain, and the Ferrari is in the lead. Alan Simonson has moved on through. That's the 458 just flashing through the shot there. It's still dark. Remember, this race started at 6:15 a.m. local time. A lot of the teams were walking in here at 3:45. It's a long day.
I don't think you would have seen any drivers at 3:45, but coming up to the best time of the day at Bathurst, just as the sun breaks, track's incredibly fast, the cars are making big horsepower. If you want to go fast, coming up to the right time of day to do it.
And already lapping cars, slower production cars. That is one of the critical phases of this 12-hour race that I guess we don't see so much in V8 supercar racing and the like. You have to be patient and you have to pick your moment.
You certainly do, and one of the bigger things in this early part of the race while it's still dark is the headlights. Your headlights, the faster car, in the rear vision mirror of the slower car in front. It reflects into their rear vision mirrors, makes it hard for them to see where you're at. All they just see is a massive glare in their rear vision mirror. Hard for them to actually do the right thing and get out of your way.
This is Warren Luff in the number 2 Audi. This is the Redback Spider car. This is the Australian car with Lowndes, Luff and Mark Eddy, who's the reigning Australian GT champion. Craig Baird just behind on the road. And Ferrari, remember, because Berto went too fast in qualifying, it's carrying an extra 50 kilograms. And we should point out that 2-minute-8 ceiling is not about slowing the cars down or anything like that. It's about making sure that the qualifying number for the slower cars doesn't put them out of the field and they don't qualify.
That's right. It's all about the slowest cars in the field have to be within a certain percentage of the fastest car in the field. Now, these GT3 cars in pre-event testing were doing 2 minutes 4, like nearly 2 seconds faster than a supercar. They make all their time across the top of the mountain. They've got a lot of aero. But if those guys went mental in qualifying on soft rubber, with the good drivers, they'd be doing 4s, making the percentage for the slowest drivers much more difficult to achieve.
You just see that it's starting to clear at the top of the mountain as the sun starts to rise. And remember that this event was reborn in 2007, but it was first run back in 1991 for, well, production cars, really. It stepped up last year to GT spec cars, and we're seeing teams start to put this race on their calendar alongside the Dubai 24 Hour that kicked off the year. Remember that the Black Falcon team that are here this weekend won that race.
Yeah, so this race is now becoming an international marker. It's becoming one of the races that international teams say, hey, we'd like to do that race. We want to go and do it. It's early in the year, so they can get themselves prepared. They can get their freight out to Australia, do this race, and then send their freight to the next big endurance race, whatever that may be. So manufacturers like Audi, who were here for the first year of GT3 last year, Mercedes have jumped on board this year, having those international manufacturers decide, look, this race, this track is one of the ones that we want to do. It's great for Australian motorsport, and it'll help grow this event to a much bigger race.
And the unique nature too, Garth, of GT racing is that, yes, there are some professional drivers, the likes of Craig Lowndes and Stephen Johnson and Stephen Richards are in this race too. We'll cover them a little bit later on. They're in one of the class-running Porsches. But GT racing is primarily about the amateur drivers, the gentleman drivers, who obviously are the backbone of the series. Each car in this race is only permitted 2 seated, i.e. professional or profile drivers. They must be teamed with effectively an amateur.
That's correct. So gentleman drivers, they're the staple of GT racing globally. That still happens in Europe, it happens in America, and now happening here in Australia. And I think that's a good thing because it keeps the guys, at the end of the day, there's a lot of these guys that are funding these teams are gentleman drivers. So to have them team up with Craig Lowndes, with Warren Luff, it's a great opportunity for them.
Here is the replay of the Black Falcon Mercedes, the GT3 SLS, just glowing the discs already. You could probably get breakfast off them.
Engineers get very just scared when they see that sort of stuff. You can't see that stuff in the day, but early in the morning when it's dark, you can see that and go, oh, the brake temperatures, are they too high? Are we doing the right thing? But their telemetry will be telling them, no, everything's good.
You can hear that distinctive scream of the 458 Ferrari and the Audi R8. Even though you can't see the cars, they're very distinctive in their note, and it's hard just staying awake down at Phoenix Racing. It's
early
still
start for these boys, early start. No, the mechanics, they would have been here 4 o'clock in the morning, worked very late the night prior to make sure everything was ready in the team so they could roll out and be ready to go at 6:15.
That's Christian Clean in the Lotus, just heading on through in front of the 21 Mercedes with Jean-Paul Breslin at the helm.
When you say Christian Clean and Lotus, you'd think Grand Prix, exactly. Formula One car. You don't think production car, Bathurst.
It's an interesting story because Rob Thompson, the car owner, was at the Nürburgring 24 Hour last year, met Christian, they kept in touch. They spoke on the Gold Coast last year when Christian was out to drive in the V8 supercar race with Paul Dumbrell. Ended up doing a deal. He desperately wanted to come and race at Bathurst, and he's come and run in what is a class car. It will not win this race outright. That just shows the level of commitment for him to do this race.
We're here on board with one of the class BMW 130s, pointing very, very early to the faster cars to let them through, but the faster car hasn't come yet.
It's coming.
We'll wait for it across the top as we go to Skyline. It's not one of the fastest cars, one of the class Lotuses. So even the slower cars are racing with some of the less slower cars, and then the faster outright cars will be coming through on top of all of them.
And that's Alan Shepherd at the helm, who's been a regular runner in the 12 hour, and these mighty little BMWs that have really performed so well in the class fights right throughout the course of the last couple of years. You might remember too that he owned that Mazda that went over on its lead with his good mate Len Cave at the helm a couple of years ago as well. But the BMW has all 4 on the ground. It's in Class E this weekend. That's the STP production class, and of course the Merc here is in Class A, pedigree GT3 outright.
Just see there one of the Audis coming up the inside of the Lotus. Now the speed differential is huge. You see here, before much longer, the Audi's gone. It's out of the windscreen. You don't see it again, and it'll be another 7, 8, 9, 10 laps. It'll be back again, and that's going to be an ongoing occurrence all day. And for the faster guys, it's about how you get through the field quickly without inconveniencing yourself. And for the slower guys, it's about letting the faster cars through without slowing yourself down.
Now, this is the BMW 335. This is Peter O'Donnell's car. This is a car that's won the race 2 times before in the production car era in the hands of Gary Holt and a variety of other drivers, but they've got problems.
Certainly have got problems, and these guys would have been one of the outright contenders for the production car class. So to have dramas like this, looks like they're working on the brakes, a lot of steam, bleeding the brakes. So to be bleeding the brakes this early, they've got a problem in the fluid system. So obviously decided they got a long pedal. It's important to get this fixed early, because the earlier you fix a problem like that, the bigger chance you give yourselves for catching back up throughout the day.
Talk about catching up. They are trying to catch this man. The Dane, Alan Simonson, is flying. This Ferrari is regularly lapping in the 2-minute 7 bracket, 2-minute 8s. It's charging out in front. It has pulled such a big margin. Remember, he teams up with Dominik Farnbacher, the German driver that he competes with quite regularly overseas. John Bauer needs no introduction, former Bathurst 1000 winner. And Peter Edwards, who drives regularly for the Maranello team in GT racing. That's one hell of a lineup.
Strong lineup. And speaking to Alan in the lead up to this event, he was just saying how much grip this car has across the top of the mountain. Some of the speeds he was telling me that he was doing in this car, flat out around the kink before Forest Elbow. He says, when you brake here at the end of Conrod Straight, you've literally stand on the brake pedal, got enough time to go from 6th gear to 2nd gear and get off the brakes and turn it in. Incredible speed.
This work continues on the BMW 335i. Christian de Gostin is part of the driver lineup with Garth Duffy. And that's a real shame. This is far too early for them to be in there. And clearly a brake problem with this car that won the race in 07 and in 2010. Of course, that was the last year before we stepped it up to GT racing. This guy's stepping it up. If anyone's asleep, he's waking them up with his pace.
I think he's woken them up in orange. He's going that fast and that loud. Certainly driving very, very hard very early. Alan's done a lot of laps in Ferrari. He's done a lot of endurance racing, done Le Mans, done the Nürburgring race. Certainly understands how hard to push these types of cars early in the event. So it's not like he's being reckless here. He certainly knows how to drive the car on the limit without extending the car, without using up the car too much.
And that's one of the main things in that it's always difficult in endurance racing. We've talked about it before in years gone by. We've got to run the rhythm that your car can do. If you're trying to drive at 6 or 7 tenths, it might not work for you.
That's right. You've got to run close to the limit, about 7/8 tenths, without extending the car. Now we see on screen the Stevie J, Stevie Richards, Nathan Tinkler car with Stephen Richards at the wheel. Now, Richo's obviously done a lot of Carrera Cup racing over the last 12 months, getting out of the way for the Ferrari there. Alan Simonson is on it, isn't it? I mean, Steve Richards done 1 million miles around here. Admittedly, Steve's in a Class B Porsche GT3, but Simonson just driving the wheels off this Ferrari.
And Richardson, Johnson and Tinkler are in the Century Batteries GT3 class. They are leading the way in Class B, but this is the car that leads Class A. It leads outright. The 4.5 litre V8. It's got that distinctive scream on its way. This was the car that did 2 minutes 4 in November in a test up here. It is phenomenal. There's Stephen Johnson sitting by, and Malcolm Swetnam's here too. He's the team manager from Dick Johnson Racing and very experienced in GT racing as well.
Certainly has a lot of experience globally in motorsport. So just here having a look at this 12-hour, probably getting a bit of an eye in for when we come back for the 1000 in October. But certainly these guys, these international teams, the United Autosports team, done a lot of racing internationally. The Black Falcon AMG Mercedes team, these guys will be loving it here. Just having the opportunity to come race around Mount Panorama in cars they know very well, but a circuit they don't know that well, hoping to get 12 hours of experience around here in the race so that they can hopefully come back in the future, tell their mates, tell some of the other teams, and let's grow this race.
As the Merc chases the Audi, let's go down to pit lane with Grant. He's got some more on the problems with the BMW.
We had a brake issue right from the start, and we were trying to battle through the first change, but it was just wasn't coming good at all. And then things got very busy with a couple of the GT cars coming through the S's and the Dipper, and I bumped the wall up there. So it was time to bring it in, just check the car out, and I've handed it over to Garth now, and he'll go out. I think they've sorted out the brake issue. I think everything else is looking good.
Well, they will push on, but the Mazda is in pit lane. Duvashen Padashi has started the Rickshaw RX-7. This is in the Invitational class, Total Lubricants Class I.
And Rickshaw Mazda, this car's been racing for a long time. Very, very successful in the mid-90s in GTP racing. And Rick's been racing rotaries for a long time. This car, or one of these cars that Rick has built, has done a lot of racing over in Germany in the 24-hour race at the Nürburgring.
Back on board the 21 Mercedes-Benz with Sean Paul Breslin, of course, the Black Falcon team teaming up this weekend with the Erebus Racing team that run the Peter Hackett car in the local Australian GT Series. John Bow and engineer Matty Boniface conflabbing. I'm surprised they're still awake. They should be in bed.
It's very early for JB to be out of bed, but getting itchy feet, you can see, talking with the engineer. Simonson, he's not going too fast, is he? So JB still as sharp as anything.
Here's the Donut King Nissan GTR with Peter Lemus starting off things in the car that he shares with Tony Alford, and Adam Beachy, reigning Commodore Cup champion and
This car's had a lot of development since last year's race. Melrose has been working really, really hard, and it's a big, heavy car. They will not push this car to 100% because it won't make it, but it's been a good, solid runner so far this weekend.
Certainly a good start to the race. We see one of the AMG Mercedes in pit lane. Very long pit lane. Seems like it takes an eternity to get to your pit box, but these guys now, early stop.
And this is a good chance for us to see exactly how it works in the 12-hour. The car being refueled, they can't do tyres and fuel at the same time. That's the rules for this race.
That's right. So it doesn't look like a driver change because you can do a driver change while all that other stuff is taking place. But fuel first, and what will happen with a lot of these cars is they'll only do fuel and go again. They'll double and sometimes triple stint these tyres, especially when it's early in the day, the track's nice and cold, not hard on the tyre. So no, they're going to go ahead and do tyres. So sometimes what you'll do is you'll run a softer compound in the early part of the day, and then later in the race, when the sun's out, you run a harder compound tyre, and then later in the day when it's time to get going, put another set of softs on.
You can see that Michelin is the rubber of choice here. They are providing the control tyre for the first 3 classes, Class A, B and C. That is compulsory that you must be using that rubber. They've brought some engineers in from overseas to assist them with this weekend.
Fitting green or brand new tyres to the car, so plenty of tyres available to the cars this weekend.
Crew back over the red line and gear engaged, and the SLS GT3 is back in the race, and at least it's light now. You can see where he's going.
See where you're going. Very different pit stops to what we're used to seeing here in Australian V8 supercars, where obviously the fuel, the tyres, everything, and here at Bathurst, driver change all happens at once. And the reason for spreading the fuel and then the tyres gives the drivers much more time to do a driver change, as we were talking about before. There's some gentleman drivers, so it gives them more time to get in, get safely the seatbelts and all their safety devices all done up, so then they can get back out and get into it.
And here is the United Autosport Audi with Mark Patterson at the helm, 4th in the Rolex 24 last year. He's run with this team before in Europe in the GT3 Championship and at the Spa 24 Hour, which is now very much a GT race. He was 8th in the 09 Rolex series in the United States with the Daytona prototype. So he's got a lot of experience, and this team does as well in a variety of sports car and GT disciplines.
It certainly has. And what's great about these guys coming to Bathurst is obviously the Australians, we know the track, we know how it works. We see here one of the M3s, looks like a flat tyre, so doing the right thing, getting off the racing line and actually running that car down in the grass and in the dirt, because it's softer for the car. It's softer, you're not going to tear the rubber up. When you run on it, one of the Audis comes past nice and close. When you run it down in the grass there, it doesn't tear the rim up, so it's not going to do further damage to the car. The important thing is here to stay where he is. Don't deviate off that line, because some of the other drivers, they'll see him up the road and take that into account.
This is the Richard Gartner, Tony Pryor and Angus Chappell car. This is the little BMW 130i that's been so competitive. Now, this Merc was only just in the lane not long ago. It's back, which tells to me that there's a drama.
There's a drama, and they've got what looks like go jacks or dolly jacks going under it, so they're going in the garage here. So the pit stop before really didn't look like it was a hasty pit stop. Looked like they were just taking their time a little bit. And usually what you do is, as par for the course, you'll put fuel in it, put tyres on it, send the car again, and if there's still a drama, then come back and obviously into the garage for further investigation.
Now, we're hearing from the lane that there's a drama with the rear end of this car, that Sean Paul has felt there is something not quite right, so he thought it was best to bring it in. This will happen all day long. Yeah. Craig Baird very nearly tripping over the Dean Lilly HSV at the top of the hill.
So very, very difficult. That's one lane raceway through there from basically Skyline the run down to the Dipper. It's all one lane, and Bairdo lobbed over the top of Skyline, and there's a HSV in the way. Very wide car, those HSVs, and luckily they have all got through.
Our timing screen, Garth, has just lit up. Alan Simonson has just set a 2-minute 6.58. That is a new outright lap record for Mountain Panorama. It's faster than Jamie Wincup's race lap record from the 1000 here, which I think from memory was 2007. That was in the 2-minute 8 bracket. That's phenomenal.
Very, very fast. We were saying earlier, while it was still dark, that the fast part of the race is coming. When the sun just comes up, Bathurst traditionally incredibly fast first thing in the morning. And we said Simonson's driving the wheels off that Ferrari. A 206.5 at the beginning of a 12-hour race. That's incredibly fast. Faster than Murph's magic 206.8.
Warren Luff, car number 2, working his way past the United Autosport Audi. That's a separately run car, even though it is an R8 LMS, which has been Audi's fantastic GT3 weapon. Remember that they finished 1-2 in the race here last year with the same Australian driver lineup, and 2 of the 3 drivers that are competing in car number 1. We'll touch on that a little bit later when we focus in on that car that currently sits second overall in the race. But the Aussie car, they're playing themselves in. They haven't been setting the big numbers, but they're looking solid.
Well, what's important is you just need to stay on the lead lap. There's going to be safety cars. There's going to be strategy as the race unfolds. So you just need to stay on the first lap. Yes, it's great to be doing lap records, to be pushing as hard as Alan Simonson is, but really, at the end of 12 hours, what it's important to be is on the lead lap with the right drivers, everything comfortable, playing the car in. These cars would have started with brand new brakes at the start of today, so you just got to bed the brakes in, just take it easy, build yourself into the race. Simonson through the traffic.
Take it easy, you reckon?
Yeah, taking it easy. He is driving very, very quickly, but the smart guys, you know, like we talk about Luff, Lowndes and Mark Eddy, they're just staying on the lead lap. They're just hanging around, as is the Euro Audi car 1. They'll be doing the same thing. So just be there and take advantage of the safety cars when they come.
Another of the Kiwi BMWs in the pit lane. That was Lewis Scott's car. This is Craig Baird in the Clearwater Ferrari, the 33 car, the 458. This team having its first run at Bathurst, and their team have said, we finish in the top 7 or 8, we'll be really wrapped. We want to build and come back next year, but judging by the pace, they should be aiming a little bit higher.
These Ferraris incredibly fast in the dry. They've really had great speed. They're probably the fastest GT3 car here this weekend. Just fuel for Beardo, and Beardo stays in the car. So we were talking earlier about double stinting the tyres. Now Beardo was driving very casually, staying out of trouble.
There's a drama. This is the race leader, Alan Simonson, the Ferrari, slowing at the top of the mountain. Let's listen. It's still got power, but not much. It's crawling its way across the top.
It's meant to be a V8 Ferrari, but I think it's only
like a V4.
A 3-cylinder version at the moment. So what's important here for Alan is he obviously needs to get back to the pits. He needs to get basically safely to just the peak of that hill just there. And will the car roll on that far?
And he didn't want to be on the right-hand side on that crest because it's blind, and that's race line as well.
That's right. So what if you can get to the top of the... He looked like he grabbed the gear and got going again. So if you can get to the crest at McPhillamy Park, you can actually roll all the way to here, all the way to pit lane without an engine. You don't need it.
So this is now the race leader that's coming in. Car 1 inherited the lead when Simonson started limping at the top of the hill. Christopher Meese, the former European GT3 champ, in the lane, and you see the brake dust.
Brake dust coming off. So these guys are pushing hard, and certainly the engineers sitting in the garage won't like seeing a lot of brake dust fly out of the front wheels when the car pulls up. Fuel at the moment. We'll watch to see if they do tyres as well. It'll take the same strategy. Team manager Craig Lowndes watching on.
Got the headset
He's
down,
clearly not jumping in the car at this pit stop.
In the background, that's Krista Jones, who is the third driver in the number 1 car. It's his debut at Bathurst, but Simonson, at least, he can roll it from here. It's downhill to the elbow and then downhill for the majority of Conrod Straight. So high drama at the end of hour number 1. The Ferrari was leading the way as the clock ticked over. In Class B, it's the Porsche. The Nissan leads in Class C. Great spread of cars right throughout the classes. The Astra is leading the way in Class E, but outright it will become Audi 1-2. Tim Slade in third in Mercedes-Benz and David Russell fourth in the Lambo. More from the mountain, just a second.
Looks like Alan Simonson may have run out of fuel. It's fired up and it doesn't sound like it's coughing or missing now. Full of fuel. Let's see what they do. Will they let it out? Yes, they're going to send it back out on the track.
Well, Grant Boyden, this is really interesting stuff back here at Mount Panorama, because the car that led the early part of the race, that dominated Garth Tander, it still doesn't sound right, though, as it leaves the lane.
Didn't sound right when Alan flicked off the pit limiter, and it's not accelerating away as you'd expect based on his pace early in the day. So these Ferraris are incredibly fragile. They've got so many complex computer systems on them. We heard it before he got back to the pits that it was missing. It doesn't really sound like it's missing, but it's obviously not at full speed. So, you know, to say it's out of fuel and Alan limped it back, that's a pretty basic error to make. These guys wouldn't make that mistake. So clearly there's a problem with the car somewhere. And, and it did this before. It sort of coughed and spluttered, then went, and then coughed and spluttered. So obviously an intermittent issue with the 17 Ferrari right now.
Pit lane is becoming a busy place as the cars get to the end of their first fuel load. They'll get a good read now on exactly how far they can go on a tank of fuel, and we will see quite often double stints on tyres, maybe even triple stints on tyres, which is quite amazing. The weather hasn't been too kind in the lead up to this race. We are expecting a little bit of wet weather somewhere today, so the wet weather rubber will come into play later on.
Certainly will, and what we're also see here is the opposition teams will start to get an idea of fuel economy of their opposition. So the Ferrari is obviously going to have much different fuel economy to the Lamborghini, and the Lamborghini different to the Audi, and the Audi different to the Mercedes, all very different engine combinations. So putting in the back of your mind for later in the day, knowing how many laps each car can do on a tank of fuel is going to be critical for strategy when you're racing your opposition to the end of the 12 hours.
Driver change for the United Autosport Audi R8 LMS with Alain Lee, who will take over, the French-born Hong Kong driver. This is very much a team with gentlemen drivers. They don't have any full-time professional drivers in the mix, but if they can stay consistent and stay out of trouble, they're a big chance. Now the tyre change will come next.
You can see here on the back of the car, attached to a tow strap, is actually an earthing strap, which they put on the cars to stop when they're refueling, to stop any static charge so there can be no sparks. 17 Ferraris made it back to pit lane. They're going to go ahead and do a tyre change and plug a laptop in.
Now, I wonder what's Italian for Control-Alt-Delete, but they're clearly trying to reset this car.
The situation with the Maranello Motorsport car is they thought that even though the fuel gauge indicated that there was fuel in the car, that maybe there was a misreading with the sender, so they elected to put fuel in it and send it back out as we saw. Obviously, that's not the case. While he was doing that lap, a very slow lap for Alan Simonson, they were getting to change the mapping. They've decided to go for a standard pit stop.
I hope Grant's had his wheat picks today, because he's going to be running up and down the lane, because even though there's not a massive field at Bathurst today, they will be in the lane quite a bit. Stephen Richards is on board the Porsche. Stephen Johnson is relaxing, and he's not due to go in this car until third. Nathan Tinkle, the car owner, will step in second, so I'm surprised that Steve's not still in bed.
Stevie's got the shorts on, so clearly not going to jump in the race car anytime soon with no driving suit on. Steve Richards started in the race, as we said earlier, done a lot of laps now in Carrera Cup, knows these Porsches very well, obviously knows Bathurst very well. Was actually my teammate, the 24-hour race, knows about endurance racing, and certainly doing a great job.
Here's the Nissan GTR, the Donut King machine that Peter Lemus started the race in. Of course, Nissan and GTRs in Bathurst. There's a vibe there, isn't there?
Yeah, it certainly is. Important to note also, that GTR is not the GT3 spec GTR, it's a production.
This is one of the BMWs from the New Zealand Motorsport Services team. David Glasson, Dennis Roderick and Aaron Harris behind the wheel. Dean Lilly's HSV is in the lane as well.
Dean Lilly, that's the way to bounce back after a crash in qualifying. Fast out there, but how does the car feel?
Fantastic. Didn't look real good after it got fenced yesterday, but got a really good crew of guys here that worked real hard, got it out for the second qualifying even. And the car's faster than it's been all weekend. It's just, we haven't had the best preparation leading up to the event, but we've worked hard since we got here, and it's a rocket.
And that HSV rocket is in Class D. That's the Fuchs Lubricants production car class. It's up against the BMW 335i, the Subaru WRX STI. It's a pretty competitive little production class, and one that we'll keep an eye on for the rest of the day.
Certainly will, as one of the Porsches in for a driver change and a bit of fuel. And pretty much everyone coming in around this hour and a half mark. So first stint's done, now just starting to get into the grind of the race.
Car 20, the Mercedes-Benz SLS. We haven't really seen much of this car. They are just being a bit of a steady, quiet horse. Tim Slade, Peter Hackett, the Dutchman Jeroen Blekemolen, who is very, very experienced, and the American amateur driver Brett Curtis, who has joined the crew. Now, it's quiet. Just listen.
No, this is not a hybrid.
No, this is a diesel-powered Say It. There's never been a Say It, in my knowledge, ever to race at Mount Panorama until today.
The engine is running.
It is working. Yes. That car's come from the Dubai 24-hour.
Have they put fuel in it since then?
Not yet. It's still going. This Lamborghini's going okay. David Russell, car owner Roger Largo, and Wayne Park, highly experienced Queenslander. This is a car from Reiter Engineering. David Russell went to Germany last year and tested it at Hockenheim. It is a real factor. And I think they're a dark horse as well.
Latest of the latest for Lamborghinis in Australia. We're now the Richards, Johnson, Tinkler Porsche in for a tyre change and driver change by the looks of things.
And this is the second of the Mercedes, which we've seen in the lane quite a few times. They seem to have got that rear suspension issue sorted out. This is the 65 Porsche, one of 4 cars being run by the Kiwi Motorsport Services team. I just like listening to this Merc, though. It sounds fat.
Certainly does. The Motorsport Services team do a fantastic job every year coming over for this race. Certainly supported this race hugely from the start, and great to see them out here having a run. This Porsche running in Class B.
And that's the car that's contending with the Tinkler, Richards and Johnson car for the Class B. Team manager Craig Lowndes is still relaxing.
Any chance Lowndes going to jump in a race car today and actually do some driving?
Eventually. Paul Warren Luff's doing all the work at the moment. This is a Ferrari. This is the Clearwater car. Craig Baird started the race. He stayed on board at the first pit stop. He's got a very experienced Irishman in Matt Griffin to team up with, and also Mokwen Sun, the Asian GT champion. This is the Little Lotus. Christian Clean, Rob Thompson and Sarah Harley, who's the only female racer in the field. This is one of those cars that will go all day long. The United Audi, though, wide at the top of the hill.
See, they're using that new asphalt run-through that was put in a couple of years ago at the top of Skyline, and fantastic illustration because that used to be a gravel trap, and that Audi would have been full of rocks and stones. It would have been stuff strewn all over the racetrack. Much safer option there now with the asphalt.
And here is the leading car, car number 1. This is the team, well, 2/3 of the team that won last year's race. Christopher Meese was here. Daryl O'Young, who's raced in the World Touring Car Championship. He's done all sorts of stuff. Another problem, though, this BMW, the 135i, is in the garage. And, of course, when the cars are in the garage, Garth, everyone you've got on your team can go to work on that car. But while it's in the lane, you're limited to the crew members that can attack it.
Certainly. So the best option for fixing things in a hurry is get the car in the garage, get the issue sorted and get it fixed, get back out there.
This is Team Young Gun. This is the Astra that Scotty Pye has just jumped out of, Elliot Barber's jumped into. They'll race one another this year in the Dunlop Series for V8 Supercars. Scott, though, very impressive young guy. Triple Eight have signed him up. He's been racing in overseas open wheelers in Formula 3, where he's won a race last year, and he won the British Formula Ford Championship as well. And this is part of him getting his experience up at Bathurst before October.
Certainly about getting laps, getting miles. That car run by Ryan McLeod and Racer Industries group of companies, and the young guys, Elliot Barber and Scotty Pye, getting plenty of laps for maybe when they come back and race a bit bigger car in October.
Yeah, any lap counts. It doesn't really matter what car it's in. This is the fight in Class D. Of course, the BMW is coming from a long way back with those brake problems earlier on. The HSV is rolling quite well. Now, speaking of rolling well, Alan Simonson has just lowered his own lap record. He's got it down now to 2 minutes 6.3311. These numbers are sparkling.
Well, we said earlier in the day we didn't quite understand why he was going so hard so early, but he has to go hard now. He's a couple of laps behind. He needs to catch up after those sensor problems or whatever problems they were. Maybe the Italian Control-Alt-Delete reset has fixed the Ferrari, because it's certainly flying now.
You're stealing my lines, Tander. He's coming up on Nathan Tinkler in the number 3 Porsche. There he is, just dropping down the 997 GT3 Cup car. But the interesting factor here too, Garth, is that all of these top-line teams have to protect their slower driver. When they use, in this case, Peter Edwards, who's a good, solid, regular performer in the GT Championship, but he's not a John Bowe, he's not an Alan Simonson, he's not a Dominic Farnbacher, and even he admits that. It's a case of when do you put him in? When's the best time? Clearly,
certainly not next.
Not now, because Bowes getting in.
JB's got his suit and helmet on, ready to go.
And the reigning Touring Car Masters champion will step in. Of course, a 2-time winner of the 1000, a winner here at the 12 hour. This is the leading car, Christopher Meese. Last year's race-winning driver steps out. The new man, Christa Jones, a 24-year-old German who's been an Audi driver the last couple of years. He's been here for a week to get himself ready and right in the mindset for the Bathurst 12 hour today. This is the Donut King Nissan. We saw this car a little earlier on. Peter Lemus started the race, and they've done a lot of work. They've completely rebuilt this car since last year's race. It had an engine problem. It used a lot of oil. It blew a bit of smoke. For them, they wouldn't mind a bit of wet weather. Remember, it's four-wheel drive.
Make a big difference around here in the wet. So there the Audi just taking a little while to fire up. Andy Stall kicking in, and away we go. So just started to just ease out now. Certainly not the spectacular launches that we see in the more sprint-oriented races, because it's just about looking after the car. It's about logging laps. Certainly in the first half of a 12-hour race, the first 6 hours are literally logging laps, staying on the lead lap, staying out of trouble.
So the number 1 Audi and the number 17 Ferrari, after all of that stuff going on in the first part of the race, are now within a couple of 100 metres of one another. However, the Audi is a lap or so in front.
Certainly. So Simonson's still sprinting. We're seeing he's doing lap record pace every lap at the moment, trying to catch up, trying to get themselves back on the lead lap. Now, all this is doing is it's stressing the cars, putting extra stress on the car. If they didn't have that fuel sensor problem earlier in the race, they would be able to cruise a bit more, look after the car, make it last that 12 hours.
Here is the 23 Lamborghini, started by David Russell. It's owned by Roger Largo, who's the reigning Porsche GT3 Cup Challenge champion here in Australia. Warren Luff's in the lane too, so the number 2 Audi has gone a little bit further than number 1. That might not sound like much now, but you add that up over the course of 12 hours as Craig Lowndes steps in, and that could be of a benefit.
Certainly. So Luffy certainly wasn't pushing as hard as the number 1 Audi, so maybe just saving a bit of fuel along the way. Lowndes to finally decide to throw a helmet on and jump in the race car and go for a drive. And the Lamborghini, they're also changing tyres as well as doing fuel. So it's worth noting now, just these little changes, little differences in the pit strategy. putting tyres on now. Does the Lambo use its tyres more than the Audi and the Ferrari?
The number 1 Audi sweeping across the line. Of course, the number 2 car is in the lane, so it'll be interesting to see where they come out in comparison with one another. And remember that Alan Simonson's there desperately trying now to stay on this lap. If he gets a safety car, he scores a free lap back.
Certainly important for the Ferrari to stay in front of those Audis that have now switched places. The Aussie Audi, if you like, in front of the Euro Audi. So just running that little bit longer, luff saving, maybe a little bit more fuel has enabled them on track position to get in front. Now that might not mean much now, but if it rains, it means they get to come into the pits first.
And we've seen Craig Lowndes have a few dramas with having to pit stack in years gone by in other races, haven't we?
Certainly a big race here last year. They did a little bit of stacking that cost them a bit of time. In the end, it helped me, so that was not a bad thing.
I was going to say, there might have been another guy who was quite happy about how that all worked out. Of course, Lowndes last year was the runner-up in the 12-hour by fractions of seconds in a 1-2 finish. He was second to you in the 1,000 in October by the smallest ever racing margin. So combined, he was less than a second behind in the 2 big races at Bathurst.
Oh, he's won enough up here. That'll be enough. He'll win again one day, no doubt. We see here the Ferrari just getting held up a little bit behind the Maximum Motorsport Subaru, but still important. I mean, the Ferrari's not racing that Subaru. It's racing those Audis. It's not racing them directly. It's racing them for track position. It's about staying in front, and that means they'll get a free lap back should and if a safety car comes.
Remember too that with the pace that's been generated in this early part of the race, last year's lap record, i.e. the number of laps done in 12 hours, it was 292 laps. That could be under threat.
Certainly, they're going a lot faster this year. The outright single lap record is gone.
Where do you go? Where do you go?
Busier than Pitt Street and 6 o'clock on a Friday night in Sydney. But Simonson's certainly trying very hard to make as much time as he can, because as we expected, he's coming to pit lane. So what will happen and what could happen is he'll lose that track position to these Audis. Obviously, he needs to pit now. He needs some fuel.
John Bow waiting and standing by. A long-time runner for the Maranello team in Ferraris, and of course in the days of Nations Cup when it was Prancing Horse Racing was in existence as well. He knows his way around this track so well, and even though he's retired from V8 supercar racing, he's still doing a lot of driving, particularly in the Ferrari.
A lot of pre-event testing in his Touring Car Masters Mustang, which would be much like a Ferrari 458 GT3 car. I'm sure it handles exactly the same.
It's left-hand drive. That's about where they end. Now, in the lane, bang, stop. Refueling, driver change. And of course, tyres, if they do
Keep
them.
an eye on the tyres, whether we do tyres. Simonson's been driving very hard. Now, these Michelins, they're an endurance spec Michelin, and certainly they've got a couple of compounds to choose from.
Here is how they sit in the classes at the end of hour 2, and the Ferrari of Craig Baird leads the way. It's yet to make a pit stop. The Tinkler Johnson Richards Porsche continues to lead the way in Class B, and such a great mix of cars in the different categories. Overall, though, Ferrari and Mercedes-Benz, they will be in pit lane very soon. The Audis are 3-4. The Lamborghini sits in 5th spot. And it's been an interesting opening couple of hours, as now the Craig Baird Ferrari, after double stinting this car, the Gold Coast-based Kiwi, the 3-time Carrera Cup champ, he's bailing, and so is the Sayat.
The Sayat is looking for a diesel pump. It's actually got a bit of steam coming out, so he's done the right thing and pulled it off the circuit on the Conrod Straight on the run up the hump before the Caltex chase.
And this is a real shame because they're trying to win the Total Lubricants Class I Invitational. But let's head down to the lane. Grant's with the man at the moment from the first part of the race, Alan Simonson.
Yeah, it was pretty exciting straight out, you know, especially when the race started. We hadn't done any sessions in the dark, and I realised on the warm-up lap that I didn't have any high beams. So I was like, what am I going to see now? So it was good that the Audi was quick at the start and I could let him light the track up, so I know I was going. And then once we got into the groove and the sun came up, I had good car speed and was able to pull away and had a good stint.
Clearly, high beams, quite an expensive option on the Ferrari 458. The boys didn't tick that box, but only needed for an hour or so. And Alan actually very smart. Let the Audi do the leading. Let the light the track up.
Well, the BMW safety car is doing the leading now because the safety car is on the road. The Sayat is done, but it's on the tilt tray truck heading back to the lane where Grant is.
Martin Bailey not going according to plan for you guys, the car at the side of the track. Can you give us an update as to what transpired?
We're hoping it's only we've blown a turbo, but we're not too sure. Once the car gets back in, we'll have a look and see how we go from there. So
disappointing. How was it going up until that stage?
Car was going fantastic. We still hadn't done our first pit stop yet. We still had another half hour to go with the diesel car. First in class, so everything was looking good. It's just come out of nowhere.
Pit stop for the United Autosport Audi R8. This is Alain Lee, the French-born Hong Kong driver, stepping out. Frank, you should be getting back in. Oh, there he is, righto. I didn't think he was on the scene. Now, strategic play here from Maranello Motorsport. John Bow only was just in the lane to get in this car. They've topped it up with fuel, but I've got a feeling with the way that these umbrellas are out, they might be back in for some wet weather rubber.
Yeah, certainly. You see umbrellas go up, wet tyres move to the front of the garage. That only means one thing at Bathurst. The rains are coming, and here they are. Certainly serious rain coming down now. So these GT3 cars got a few more tricks to play with as far as little driver aids to turn up. You can turn up the ABS, you can turn up the traction control. This is all stuff we don't have in a V8 supercar. So when the track's in these changeable conditions, you can get away with a slick tyre for a little longer before you need the wets.
So the safety car is on the road, the BMW M5. That's a new model car that's out in March here in Australia, which is a fantastic car, but it's going to lead the way. I've got a feeling it will do a bit more of that during the course of the day, but the Audis are now 1 and 2 in numerical order, with the European car leading. That's the number 1, the black and yellow machine. Car 2, Craig Lowndes is at the wheel of that car. It's now second. Just go back 2 cars in the queue. The Mercedes-Benz with the Dutchman, Jeroen Bleekemolen, now at the helm. It sits in third. They're creeping up on this race. They've said, look, we do not have the pace. We can't race with the Audis and the Ferraris, but we can play the fuel game. We can run a little bit longer and work on our strategy.
Certainly, and we were saying earlier, it's important just to stay in touch. The safety cars are going to come. They will come. It's a 12-hour race. It's inevitable. So you just need to be on the lead lap. Stay in touch. Start to use your advantages where you can. And the Mercedes guys think they've got a fuel advantage, maybe to the tune of 1 or 2 laps. It doesn't mean much now, but you multiply that by 7, 8 pit stops. That's a big fuel window.
Change for the lead. The 5-time Bathurst 1000 winner, Craig Lowndes, moves on through. He goes by Christy Jones, and of course, here's the funny situation. Jones knows these cars really well. Lowndes knows them a little bit from last year, but he knows the track intimately.
It's all about track knowledge here, and certainly knowing where the weather is, what part of the track is more slippery than the other. I reckon we'll find that Christy Jones let Craig go. He thought, hang on, this Aussie bloke knows his way around here. I might just follow him for a lap or 2, see where the tricks are.
And the funny thing is with Craig, he did do the 12-hour before he ever did the 1000. The funny thing was, though, it was in a Nissan Pulsar Triple S.
Not quite the same as an Audi R8, but certainly now a run across the top of the mountain. That track is wet, and you can see the rain still coming down. So there's a decision that needs to be made here soon. Do we go to wets? Is it going to rain for long enough that we need wets and we can do pretty much a full stint on them? Or is this rain going to pass? Will the track dry back out again and we can just press on the slicks?
And the guy pressing on is in third spot, the Mercedes-Benz with Jeroen Bleekemolen at the helm. He's closing in on the Audis. The Merc looks a lot more comfortable in these greasy conditions.
Certainly Bleekemolen can push on much harder here. He's actually trying to look around the outside before the dipper. I'm sure that Jeroen got the bullets, and you can't pass at the inside of the dipper, but far more comfortable and confident to push on here at the moment.
He's fresh, of course, we mentioned earlier, from winning for the Black Falcon team the 24 Hours of Dubai. As he looks down the inside into Falcon Elbow, he will get through to P2, but he finished runner-up this year in the GT class of the Rolex 24 Hour at Daytona by the narrowest of margins. He's come so close, but now he's got his big shot at Mount Panorama. This is the Lamborghini with Roger Largo at the helm, Ryder Engineering, who developed these Lamborghinis overseas in GT3 racing. And they are a great car, but of course we are down a Lamborghini with Ted Huglin's car too badly damaged in qualifying.
Certainly, and Roger just taking it easy, and actually had a spin coming out of the elbow at Forest Elbow, so thankfully didn't touch anything, but clearly pointing the wrong way right at the moment. Hopefully he can get this car turned around without any incident.
He was on the lead lap. He'd not gone down a lap in that pit stop cycle, but this will cost him plenty of time because he just can't go anywhere.
It won't cost him a lap, but it's certainly going to cost him a lot of time as far as track position goes. So now trying to 3-point turn. Clearly the Lambo hasn't quite got the steering lock that you'd hope for. And a really, really difficult spot because obviously cars are coming out of a blind corner. Roger can't see up the road to see what's coming at him, so he's having to do a 3-point turn in about half the track. He's doing exactly the right thing here, but it's costing him huge time.
Of course, paddle shift, 5.2 litre V10. He's done his 28-point turn.
Probably had to consult the owner's manual about how to get reverse gear as well. Incredibly complex cars.
Change for the lead again. Bleekemolen, he's picked off one Audi. Now he's got by Craig Lowndes, so he's put the Black Falcon Erebus team into the lead. The Merc has stepped it up in these conditions. They might want it to rain for the rest of the day.
Certainly, and they haven't. No one's gone to wet tyres here. Certainly not in the first part.
Nathan Tinkler.
That's at turn 2, Griffiths Bend. Trying to get off the racing line, does the right thing there, get well out of the way. Now try and get away safely as well before anyone comes back.
He will still lead Class B despite this spin because he had quite a margin. That was a bit tight.
Much margin there, but thankfully Nathan gets going without too much incident.
This is Matt Griffin, the Irishman, on board. the Clearwater Ferrari. I guess he's like Alan Simonson. He drives Ferraris here, there and everywhere. This is John Bowe. He is 6th overall at the moment. This fight back continuing from the Maranello Motorsport team, but it's going to take them some time.
Certainly will, and these Ferraris do not look comfortable at all in the wet. Roger Largo into the pits.
Now,
I think he wants some wet tyres, please.
Some grooved Michelins on standby. Nathan Tinkler's going to do the same, and it's probably a smart call. He doesn't have the experience of Stevie Richards and Stephen Johnson, and bring it in, put some wets on it, and send him back out. He'll still be in the class lead. There's nothing too much lost.
On board with one of the BMWs through the chase. And, small tank slapper, but got away with it. Certainly the right call for the gentleman drivers in these cars is to have them on the safest tyre for the condition, and that's certainly a wet weather tyre. They won't lose as much time in the wet, they'll feel more confident in the wet, and certainly won't have any issues as well.
Blinker Bowen, the race leader, two-time champion in Porsche Super Cup racing, and Porsches are going pretty well here at Bathurst. Nathan Tinkler stepped out of the 3-car.
Well, Nathan Tinkler, that was a very interesting way to finish off the session. Talk us through it.
It got very wet, very quick, and I was still on slicks and coming up Mountain Straight, changed back and braked a little bit too hard, and round and round. So a bit of fun. I was about 3/4 of the way through my stint, and good time to change. I'll let Steve handle the wet.
And the Steve that he speaks of is Steve Johnson, but this is the Frank Yu driven Audi R8. This is at turn 2. It's in the fence, and it's in the fence hard.
It's called the safety car as well, so just lost it on the exit of 2, and quite a common scene we see at Bathurst as the BMW safety car waits its call to head out in the circuit. They'll be looking for the leader to pick the leader up.
And we are at lap 62, and Alan Lee, look on his face says it all. They're done for the day. That thing is not coming back. Safety car on the road. Matt Griffin in the 33 Ferrari, the 29-year-old Irishman. He lives in the UK. He's had a great start to the year. He won the Golf 12-hour in Abu Dhabi at the Yas Marina circuit that you know so well from your trips in V8 supercars. But while the safety car's out, this is strategy play. Top it up with fuel and extend the window.
Certainly, top it up with fuel, but given the track conditions, what tyres do you put on? Do you just leave warm slicks on, or do you go for wets?
Boydo, what's the weather doing?
It's not good news, guys. Here's where we are at the moment at Bathurst at Mount Panorama. That was the shower that's just passed through. As you can see, reasonably small, but enough to dampen down the track. But look what's coming in from the north, up around Mudgee, out to Wellington. That's fairly heavy. They're dropping at about 50 millimetres an hour of rain, just where it goes green in that bunch. If it stays that way, or even thickens up by the time we get here, that's a potential downpour by our standards here at Mount Panorama. So weather-wise, it's eased up at the moment, but it's going to be a long day.
I've got a feeling too, Grant, that the prediction of a race record of most laps completed is about to go out the window with this weather. Everyone's been in the lane to just top up on fuel and head back into the queue behind the safety car.
Well, what that does is it gives you maximum flexibility with your strategy as far as your fuel tank capacity for whatever weather comes your way. So if it stays dry for a while, you'll stay on these slicks, you've got a full tank of fuel. If it happens to rain through the next fuel tank stint, you'll have to come in again anyway to put tyres on, but at least you've extended your opportunity if that rain does come.
A shame for the United team that's co-owned by Richard Dean and Zach Brown. Their R8 is on its way back to the bottom of the mountain, but not under its own power. So we're under safety car here in the Armor Bathurst 12-hour at Mount Panorama. And it's a case of catching our breath. It was such a hectic start to the race with Simonson and the Ferrari and the Audi boys getting stuck into things. And this is down back in the lane. This is the United team. They're not going to need any of these parts.
Well, it looks like they've got the spare parts out, because that's a lot of front end parts. Obviously a front grille, front bonnet, radiator ducting.
Oh, this is the Mazda RX-7. This has happened under safety car.
It's going to need a wheel alignment. I'm not sure that'll all buff out.
This is the Duvashan Padachi. We'll see him in British Formula 3 this year. James Parrish, Phil Alexander, who's been around rotaries and Bathurst for years, but it's done. That thing's not going anywhere. M5 safety car leading us around, but it's the Mercedes-Benz that leads the way. The Audis are second and third, so it's a good day to be a German car enthusiast.
It certainly is, and I would expect that the majority of the field would have been thinking we're going to go racing again soon, and now we've had this incident with the RX-7 at the top of the hill. This is in the little slip road at Skyline, and I'm wondering whether he's come across the field at slow speed and needed to react.
Well, the Mazda is in Class I, Total Lubricants Invitational. It and the Sayat are in the same category. and that's a witness mark on the Coates High wall at the top of the mountain. I think he might have had something to do with that.
That's on the inside of the run to Skyline. And say what's happened. We got up on the curb at the Eggs McPhillamy, and that old classic photo of Alan Moffat where he's hit the wall at the top of the hill. I think that's what's happened with the RX-7.
Alan doesn't think it's classic. Wasn't one of his best moments, but nevertheless, the Audi is back now to the back of the garages. Unfortunately, it is done for the day. There's too much damage.
Maybe the guys were a bit ambitious getting the spares out because there's a lot of structural damage behind that front bumper that they'll need to rectify. I'm not sure you can do that here at the racetrack.
Of course, there are 2 Audis left in the race. They're from the Phoenix Racing squad that have done a lot over the years. They've run in Super Cup, in DTM, and so many things. But let's head back down the lane with Grant, who's got an update on the Mazda.
Well, Rickshaw, you're a bit battered and bruised from a previous event, but this is not how you wanted to see the car. Can you inform us about what happened up there?
No, absolutely not. Look, it started to drizzle and rain, and the conditions out there would be pretty horrible for all of the drivers, and they're on slick tyres, and unfortunately Phil's in the car and he's just put a foot wrong slightly across the top, as it's easy to do, and he's nudged the wall, so he's given it a bit of a wheel alignment, so to speak.
Back to green flag racing conditions, and it is Jeroen Bleekemolen, the Dutchman, in the Mercedes-Benz SLS that leads the way. This is a little tight.
That's very tight, and what you can see is you can just see the beginnings of a dry line. That rain shower's passed, and there's a dry line, but very, very narrow dry line. You only have to go a little bit offline, and you're back in the wet, and you lose a lot of grip. So obviously everyone's racing online. As soon as you step off, it could be a big incident.
You've got to be so careful picking your way through the traffic. Stephen Johnson there in the blue and red Porsche, of course, for the Newcastle Knights, the NRL team that Nathan Tinkler's heavily involved in. But it's a case of just playing it steady. You can see that dry line starting to emerge. Remember, though, that beyond the outright GT cars, a lot of these cars are otherwise running on groove tyres.
That's right, on a grooved slick. So these sorts of conditions aren't going to bother the production-based cars because they've got a groove tyre anyway. It's the more outright classes, the Class B, the Class A, that have got slicks. And they'll be liking the fact that there's a dry line, not liking the fact that you have a small incident if you run offline, and that's a big one.
And that is Breslin in the Mercedes-Benz that is in the fence at what we colloquially call metal grate.
At the
because
grate.
There's a metal grate there. Engineer Rick Kemp, who's working this weekend with the Mercedes Erebus and Black Falcon team, and that is another of the outright GT3 contenders out of this race, which is great news if you're in Class B.
It certainly is, because the Class B guys will be moving up the field as Class A eliminate themselves effectively. But it's a shame for these international teams. Come a long way, obviously, to race here at Bathurst, and to go out reasonably early. It's unfortunate for those guys.
We saw Sean Paul Breslin start the race. This is his father, Sean Patrick, who is stepping out of the damaged Serengeti Mercedes at the top of the mountain. The medical crew are there straight away. They've done a great job all weekend.
There's no way we're going to be able to repair the car. Just happy that my dad, the driver, is okay.
That's the big thing. We saw him get out, and that's good news. And it's tough when you've got a family business like this and you're racing father and son.
Yeah, these times make it a little bit more difficult. Normally it's just good fun, but this is racing.
Well, it was great to see you out here in the country, and we'll look forward to it in the future, hopefully.
Thanks.
While a lot of the focus on international teams lies with the big factory names, we shouldn't forget the massive operation run by the Motorsport Services team. This is in fact the third time that the Kiwis have made the trip to the mountain, and they've brought with them 4 cars. They've had some good results in the past, but this year could be their first class victory.
We started 3 years ago with a single car, and 2 out of the 3 drivers have joined us every year. All of the drivers from last year have come back with us again, and we got 5 new drivers this year. So, 2 Australians in the mix. So the rest are all New Zealanders, so it's very good.
In the true spirit of multi-class endurance racing, the Motorsport Services crew have put any thoughts of a victory to one side to focus on getting the most out of the team.
Time to restart. It is the beginning of hour number 4 at the Armour All Bathurst 12 hour. Craig Lowndes will lead us back to the control line. The number 2 Phoenix Racing Audi R8 LMS, with the Class B leading Porsche of Stephen Johnson at the helm. They're not racing overall, but they do lead the way in the 2 main classes.
Certainly do, and what Craig's got an advantage here is his direct opposition's a few cars behind at the safety car restart, so he can put 3 or 4 seconds on second place quite comfortably there. Second place is actually that Mercedes, it's not the Porsche, so Craig hasn't had to work too hard, and already he's got a 4 or 5 second gap.
You see the lights flashing for Jeroen Bleekemolen in the SLS GT3 AMG working its way through the order. The Clearwater Ferrari is just in... We did see a shot of it. It's briefly in among the traffic. There it is to the left of the screen. Yeah, that Ferrari is the one, if you're trying to distinguish between the two Ferraris with the yellow flashes up the middle, it's quite distinctive compared to the Maranello car.
So here we are, top 3, now leading top 3 on the circuit with the Class B leading Porsche in 3rd, Stevie Johnson at the wheel. You can see that dry line, still very narrow in the run up to the cutting, so still important to stay on line here, not make any mistakes, because as soon as you drop a hot racing flick onto a wet part of the circuit, certainly as we run up the hill here to what we call the tree, and now down into Reed Park, you know, you can have a pretty big accident as we saw in that SLS Mercedes.
Across the top and just building back up to pace, building back up to tyre temperature. It's Christy Jones, the young German, at the wheel of Carnival 1 at the moment. Darryl O'Young will step in a little bit later on in the day. Love the themes that the Audis have brought. They've got the redback spider on the Aussie car. They've got the kangaroo sign on Carnival 1. It's great stuff. And now, here comes the lunge. Bleekemolen's back into the lead.
Bleekemolen's certainly been doing his homework because you can pass there. A lot of V8 supercar passing takes place down the Forest Elbow. And Bleekemolen's got fantastic confidence in these changeable, half-wet, half-dry conditions. And, you know, you'd expect that Craig Lowndes would be pretty comfortable. He knows the circuit, knows the conditions very well. But that Mercedes certainly has good speed right in these conditions right now.
Bleekemolen we've seen in Australia before. He drove in the A1 Grand Prix Series at Eastern Creek quite some years ago. He's got confidence in this car, straight down the inside at Falcon Elbow to move back into the lead. Warren Luff, who's done some work for the day. Mark Eddy, who hasn't done any yet, but he will do the next stint when Craig Lowndes steps out of car number 2. We jump aboard for this run up the mountain, and as he said at the start of the show, now he's just jiggling that wheel. He's got a little bit of drama going on there.
Yeah, I think he's not quite comfortable with what he's got. He's making some changes on the dash now. Don't know what those switches do, but I would imagine they be the ABS and traction control. And Craig's certainly not pushing on and quite nervous when he turns into Griffiths Bend as well. So doing the right thing and just taking the pace out of the car, evaluating the car to see exactly what's wrong. It might just be simply that the tyres aren't up to temperature yet. And, you know, when these conditions are like that, you can have some weird feels. You know, you just drop a wheel into the wet part of the track and the car doesn't have the same grip as you'd expect. So important just to back it off, just assess the car, and if everything starts to come back to you and the car feels normal again, press on.
This Mercedes-Benz that leads the way, we should point out that it's not the car that Peter Hackett normally drives in the Australian GT Championship. It looks very similar, same sort of colour scheme, but of course the Erebus team cars are separately run and getting ready for the GT Championship, which is completely separate to the 12-hour. They are completely independent races and championships.
They certainly are. As you see Bleekemolen now getting held up by the Donut King Nissan, and now Christy Jones all over the back of Bleekemolen. So we've seen just in 2 laps how much this race has changed. Bleekemolen gone from having really quick speed straight after the restart to now the Audi's getting back up the pace, maybe the tyre pressure's coming in, and they've got a lot more confidence and a lot more speed across the top of the mountain.
Now let's see if it dries out, if the Mercedes can stay with the Audi. Bleekemolen's giving him no road down Conrod. He's going to make the Audi go the long way on the run to the chase. Side by side, he has to lift. The lead swaps back again to the Audi.
Great racing, and we see the Audis there bottoming out again on the brakes. So they run these cars very low, and I think the tyre pressure is also very low. It's taken them a couple of laps to get up to speed, and as they get up to speed, you see less and less of that bottoming, less and less sparks, and now Bleekemolen, I don't think, wants to really give this up without a fight. So here we are, hour 4. Lowndes is getting in on the act as well. It's on.
This is great stuff, and Audi really had it their own way last year. No one really beyond the Quinn Porsche was able to mix it with them. The Audi boys are loving this. They're 1-3 at the moment. We've got a scrap going on.
Certainly have got a scrap, and now that, you know, we've got a bit of traffic here and there, but really after a safety car restart, the first 7 or 8 laps, there's not much traffic pollution, so you can get into it, do a bit of racing, and these boys have certainly taken the cues and they're into it.
Of course, for the first few laps after a restart, there's a lot of clear road to run on, so they will come across some lap traffic very soon. Lowndes to the outside at Griffin's Bend as they climb the mountain one more time. But Jones is just starting to skip away, but it's hard to try to explain this as being an endurance race. The guys have been getting stuck into it. This is a bit more sedate. This is a bit kinder. This is Dean Herridge in the WRX STI. We know Dean from his rally work over the years, but he's been doing more tarmac stuff of late.
Certainly has, and you would have thought in the WRX STI he'll be praying for a bit of rain, 4-wheel drive, and on cue, one car into the pits, but rain coming out of the sky.
And this is the Mazda, another of the RX-7s. That's the Michael Caine, Jerry Murphy and Jim Longina car. Right, this is roaring. I don't remember remember a 12-hour in this stage of the race, rumbling like this as Lowndes now goes back to second.
I think the Audi's got a bit more top-end speed, maybe a bit more efficient through the air with aero, and much better on the brakes. It certainly seems like the Audis can brake much deeper, carry much more speed into the apex, whereas the Mercedes gets out of the corner better, but maybe doesn't have the same top speed.
This is back to the top of the hill with the Roger Largo Lamborghini and the Matt Griffin Ferrari, and they've said with this Ferrari, it just doesn't have the pace in the wet weather conditions. They're struggling with it when it's damp.
They don't have the same confidence. The car feels very edgy, and that to me suggests that these cars, the Ferraris, are probably more stiffly sprung, a bit more stiff in their rigidity, if you like, and makes them very fast in the drive. But when the weather changes and you lose a bit of grip, you lose a lot more confidence in the car. The Audi's probably a bit softer.
Car one straight ahead at Skyline.
I was just saying that the Audis look like they're a lot more confident on entry, but certainly across Skyline, just a little wide perhaps. Get caught half in the wet, half in the dry, and does the exact right thing here. Run the car through the runoff area at Skyline, and Lounsey straight up the inside. Thank you very much.
Never used to be an option with the gravel trap, and before that there was a drop. There was nothing there. Back in the day in the 70s and the like, is the BMW is back in the lane. The Peter O'Donnell car, which this team is locally, they're down the road, but they've had all sorts of problems today. Hopefully they can get on top of these brake problems and at least run right through the end and at least get some miles, because it's been a tough day. Here's another of the BMWs, the 130i, Richard Gartner, Tony Pryor and Angus Chappell. This is one of the Alan Shepard team cars, and you can pretty much run your watch to these cars. They have been unbelievable the last few years here at the 12-hour. They're the Audi of Class D and E. They just keep going.
They do. We remember when this was a production-based race and production cars, and these BMWs are really the staple of the category. Just kept going lap after lap, hour after hour. It seemed monotonous, but they're always there. And as you said, Aaron, very, very reliable, can just do lap after lap and get to the end of a 12-hour race. And, you know, if you do a good job, even though there's these flash, fancy GT3 cars up the front, you can find yourself inside the top 10.
4 hours down, 1/3 race distance. Pit lane is busy, and here is Matt Griffin. The Irishman is in, so is the Lambo for Wayne Park to take over, but importantly, it's time for some wet weather rubber.
Yeah, I reckon this is more about the rain than the fuel, and it's a much heavier rain shower than what we saw as Griffin in and Wing out. So you'll be looking for your more competent, your more confident drivers as this rain shower comes through. The more interesting thing is what tyres they're going to put on the car.
Now, Mok Wen Sun was the driver who had been in the 33 car.
Yes.
We thought it was Matt Griffin, but it's Matt getting in for this next stint at a very critical time in terms of the weather. Blinkermolen is down at the chase. Here's John Bowe, the Ferrari, back in the lane, and there is no option here. You need to go to the lane.
It certainly looks like you need wets this time. This rain shower much heavier. You can see the track. It is properly wet. Even Blinkermolen, we saw last rain shower, he was supremely confident, had great speed, but even he has said, like, we need to get in. Let's get some wet tyres on this car.
This is a driver change. John Bowe out. Dominic Farnbacher is taking over the 17 Ferrari. He's another experienced guy when it comes to sports car racing and GT racing and the like. He finished 7th in class at the recent Rolex 24 at Daytona. This is one of the Kiwi Porsches in the lane, 2nd in Class B. They're racing against the Stevens and Nathan Tinkler, but pit lane's place to be. There's barely anyone left on the road.
So we said earlier that it's important for the Audis, and particularly the Aussie Audi, to get in front on the track position so you can come in first and make the first call for wets. So the Euro Audi, or the black Audi that leaves pit lane now, had to do an extra lap at slow speed on a slick tyre on a wet track, and that's going to cost them a bit of time, as we see, because the Mercedes have got them back in track position.
And you'll see with those lights, they will flash to attract the attention of the slower drivers. John Bowe out of the Ferrari. Farnbacher now behind the wheel. German, a former class winner at the Rolex 24-hour, was 2nd in the American Le Mans Series back in 08 with Dirk Muller, who we saw on the Gold Coast last year with the Jim Beam team. Nissan GTR, I tell you what, this car had overheating problems last year. I don't think it's going to be cooking today. It's a little bit wet.
No problems at all, and they'll be thinking, wet? We'll worry about the wet. We got four-wheel drive. Let's get going.
Of course, it and the Subaru are the cars who will really benefit from these conditions. Matt Griffin playing his way in across the top, trying to get on by the little Astra.
Astra did the right thing, saw it coming and just stepped offline, and you can just see very, very little visibility. Although there's no cars in front, there's still excess spray that just hangs in the air, and it's hard to see around Bathurst when it gets like that. Obviously, a lot of rain still falling from the skies.
The Motorsport Services team have got the David Glasson, Dennis Roderick and Aaron Harris Bimmer going back in the garage, and I remember Aaron racing here in the late 90s, I should say, in the Super Touring days in the Schedule S class for the New Zealand touring cars, but have a look at the way that Craig Lowndes has got those lights flashing. He's not pressing the button 28 times. It is a setting in these cars that is programmed specifically to get the attention of the slow drivers.
Yeah, traffic button, I think they call it. And you can see here Lowndesy pressing on reasonably hard here in the wet. Obviously got good confidence in the wet tyre, and the wet tyre is certainly the right call down the inside. So the guys, you know, the dip is not a traditional passing opportunity. The guys in the slower cars doing a great job of seeing the faster ones coming, stepping off line and letting the Audi get on with the job.
Although you race full-time for the Holden Racing team and V8 supercars is what you do, we see Lowndes has been able to do a little bit of racing in the Audis and a bit of extracurricular activity. Do you think that's positive for a driver?
Yeah, I think it does, and Craig's certainly done a lot of racing. You see one of the Lotuses just cruising down Conrod Straight. Hopefully they can make it back to pit lane, but Lowndesy's done a lot of racing in other categories. Done the Safari, done the 12-hour a couple of times now, and I'd like to do a bit of that. I reckon a Corvette would go pretty well around Bathurst. Maybe and there's a GT3 Corvette in the world, so we might have to ship one out.
You might have to see if you can get a Camaro into the mix as well. It certainly could get a bit of GM love. Not good for the Porsche from the New Zealand squad. They've had a few dramas with cars in the lane of late. This is the Bruce Tomlinson, Alan Dippy and Mark Madron car, and they're under the rear of the 66 Porsche. That's a 996 model from memory. That's the older version car. And the Lotus has made it to the lane, but not quite to the pit bay.
Not quite to their bay, but they're in the lane, so that means the crew can run down and at least push the car up to their pit bay and fix whatever drama they may have. But look at the rain. This is real. This is Bathurst when it rains properly, and
puddles.
There's a lot of puddles, a lot of rivers here at Bathurst. So down the bottom of the track here, it's not too bad. It's, you know, traditional road layout. But when you get up to the top of the mountain, where it's obviously rises and fall, a lot of rivers that cross the mountain, and that's the sort of stuff that'll catch the guys with less experience at this circuit out, because it's not knowing where those rivers are.
Saw a quick shot of the Boss Plaster HSV, Rick Newman, Dean Lilly, and James Atkinson in the lane. This Mazda, they've not done many laps at all. They've had all sorts of problems. The Sayat is running again. Hang on, listen. It is running. I'm telling you, it's running.
I'm sure that thing's electric. It's not diesel. It's very, very quiet. But obviously they felt they had a turbo problem. We haven't heard exactly what it was, but whatever the drama was, they fixed it and they're out racing. And that's the great thing about 12-hour racing. These guys have travelled a long way to be here. They had a mechanical drama, and it's great that they could fix the car, get back out there in not fantastic conditions, but at least have a bit of fun here at Mount Panorama.
Martin Bailey is the Aussie connection in the Dutch run car. Griffin looking on Wayne Park. Gets it done. That's for 5th place. So the Lambo drops back to 6th. And these conditions are really, really tricky now. In a lot of cases, you've got drivers who don't know the track, drivers who don't know their cars, but you put it together and it makes an interesting race.
Certainly does, and we're in this part of the race where we've been talking about survival. We're about hour 5 now, and you've got to start keeping an eye on the leader, because the changeable conditions, changeable strategies, when you went to the wet tyre, what fuel you've got in the tank. It's all about keeping an eye on staying on the lead lap, because a lot's going to happen still. It still looks like the weather's going to hang around for a little while, so you're going to need to have good confidence in these wet conditions, but you're going to need to stay in touch with the leaders.
I haven't seen weather like this at Bathurst for quite some time. We've had bad
what are you
weather.
talking about? When it rains at Bathurst, it always rains properly.
Well, it certainly doesn't do a bad job of it. There's plenty of rivers around the place, and it can easily trap them out. This is the Sayat.
It sounds louder outside the car than inside the car.
That's the Lamborghini. That's Wayne Park. That's on the exit of Hell Corner. And has he just put a wheel up on the curb? Looks like it. This is concrete. Bang.
Oh, and when they go in exactly parallel like that, does a lot of damage, sends a lot of energy right through the front and rear of the car.
Oh, that will be expensive. The good news is that Wayne Park, he's okay. The car, the David Russell Roger Largo owned car, is done. This is Craig Lowndes, car number 2, trying to sneak his way through. That's the Clearwater Ferrari. So
that's a lap. They're putting a lap on that Ferrari, and that's important because we've said along that the Ferraris probably don't have the speed in the wet, but if it dried out later in the day, they've got great speed, but now they're a lap behind. So Lowndesy would have been working pretty hard to get that done, just to put them out of the window for a little while.
And this weather doesn't look like it's going away anytime soon. And oh, hang on a minute, the right rear's dropped off the Lamborghini.
I think we're doing this recovery under green too.
Yep, no safety car being called so far, so not a good time to be exiting the pits. Let's head down there with Grant.
Craig Baird, the question's been asked. Both Ferraris seem a little bit slower in the wet conditions out there. Are you able to enlighten us?
Yeah, it's just the aero on the car's not working well in the wet, and you know, we're probably 6-7 seconds a lap slower. Matt Griffin said to me yesterday, if it's wet, we're in trouble. It's a weak area in the car unless they go a full wet setup. So
it's not what we've got and it's not what we want. The car was good in the dry, a little bit tough this morning. We're on the hard compound tyre and we banged an extra 50 kilos in it, but yeah, we chose to just run hard tyres all day long and thinking it was going to be fairly hot. So you make your tyre choice a few days ago and there was hot weather here and now we've been caught out a little bit. So my first stint, I really struggled on the hard compound tyre and the cold conditions this morning.
So the safety car is out. We'll take a break. Hour 5 in the books, and it's still the Audi leading the way.
They say a change is as good as a holiday, but you know what? That might not be the case for Audi in 2012. You see, last year they were operating under the Team Yost banner, but this year they'll be running under Nürburgring-based Phoenix Racing. The added competition plus that big change could mean that their second trip down under will be anything but a holiday.
Phoenix Racing was founded in 1999, and since a couple of years we are one of the major factory Audi teams. And Phoenix has 2 departments. One is the German touring car department, like racing the DTM, where we luckily won the championship last year with Martin Tomczyk, so we are the reigning champion there. And the other department does the GT racing. That's 24-hour races, Nürburgring, Spa, all these large events. And yeah, so we are a little bit like specialists in GT racing. We know the R8 LMS very well. And yeah, that's why we are here. Audi was looking for a professional team to run the R8 at Bathurst. And yeah, that's what we do here.
While the team turning the spanners is different to last year, Audi have still rolled into Bathurst with a similarly impressive setup. Once again sparing no cost with their corporate retreat overlooking pit lane.
Yeah, they're really good in that and very focused, very dedicated. And it's very nice to work with. It's not only professionals in our team and the drivers, it's also very professional people working around from Audi's side.
The final piece of the puzzle for Audi's 2012 Assault is their driver lineup. They've retained 5 out of the 6 names who pedalled the R8s last year, with the only change seeing Krista Yerns replace Marcus Bassing. He'll be joining Christopher Mees and Daryl O'Young, who aren't too concerned about their new partner.
We're missing Mark Bazang, our teammate this year, but Chris and I will still try to drive hard and have a good race.
And they are having a good race. Car number 1 is right in the mix. Wet weather conditions. At the top of the mountain, the German Christa Jones. He's the new man in the link of the chain for this year, but has adapted to this mountain so well.
He certainly has. He knows the car very, very well. So learning the track was his biggest challenge this weekend.
Now
Speaking of challenges...
Yeah, this has been the story of the day. Dominic Farnbacher, the German, is behind the wheel of the 458 Ferrari. It has stopped on the run up Mountain Straight.
And that could not possibly be any worse a place to park. There's pit exit. That means you've got, of a 6.2 kilometre track, you've got about 6.0 kilometres to find your way back to pit entry to try and fix that car. You can't just pull into the back of the garage here. This road, the road just up the road, just behind the Armour All sign, you can't pull in there. That's the back of the paddock. But as soon as you pull in the back of there, you're disqualified. You're out of the race.
Well, it looks like he's out of the race anyway because there's no drive, there's no lights, there's nothing.
The extinguisher went on too. Wow. The inside of the car.
Oh, now Dominic Farnbacher, he's had the... We should remind you that there's an inboard fire extinguisher system that the driver can press a button which will launch extinguisher foam throughout the car in the case of a fire, but I don't think he's meant to do it.
No, we were just watching. It looked like there was a bit of steam coming from the car. That's why we went quiet looking what was going on, but I thought that was just brake steam and engine steam, but I think that was fire extinguisher powder just escaping from the car. So whether Farnbacher's been looking for a switch to flick to reset a button or do something like that, but he's found the wrong button. That's the fire extinguisher.
And that brings the BMW M5 safety car back onto the road. It makes pit lane busy again. That was a little bit close. Now
stop. And now gone that little bit too far. The hose is like a piano wire. Let's stretch, see if it'll reach. Not quite. Just.
Now it's in. Now they can refuel. Let's head to the lane. Grant is with Dominic Farnbacher.
Our ECU stopped working, so the car just shut down. And I tried to restart it. By turning off the main switch and turn it back on, the fire extinguisher went on and just hosed me down. But still we're having the problem, the car won't run, and we don't know what the problem is. So we think it maybe has something to do with the traction control, because the traction control all of a sudden stopped working, and now we are trying to fix the problem.
I'd say we won't see that Ferrari back. If the firebomb's gone off, they can't go back on the road without it.
They need to put another firebomb in before the scrutineers will let the car back out. And I don't reckon you want to be out there without traction control right at the minute anyway. If a Ferrari doesn't quite have the grip like we heard Craig Bird saying earlier, and it doesn't have traction control, I certainly wouldn't want to be heading back out there in these conditions.
Audi 1-2 on the restart. Christy Jones is behind the wheel of car number 1. Craig Lowndes is behind the wheel of car number 2. So they're getting the numerical order right, if anything, at the moment. But of course, the Aussies finished second last year. They'd love nothing more than to reverse the trend and reverse the numbers. Griffin back in the Ferrari, top up of fuel, and a wipe down for the other Ferrari.
Right, that fire extinguisher, it's not a powder, it's a foam, and it just goes everywhere. It's meant to obviously put a fire out, and it goes all throughout the car. JB's got his helmet on, wanting to jump back in the car, but they'll be a little while before they're ready to go.
Back to the number 3 Porsche that leads the way. Century Batteries GT3 Class B. Stephen Richards, who started the race, is at the helm of the Nathan Tinkler car. We'll see Steve back at Bathurst later on in the year. He'll team up with Mark Winterbottom for Ford Performance Racing. Pit stop time for the lead car. Car number 1 is in the lane. And it's all about refuelling, and with wet weather tyres, you'd expect they could double stint these as well.
They'll definitely double stint them. Far better to have a hot, wet tyre on the car than put a cold, wet tyre on the car. No driver change, so simply just fill it up with fuel and send it on its way again.
You can see that they're measuring the fuel by seconds as it goes in. Pit lane busy again. The BMW, it's been in there a little bit too often so far, but it seems like they've got the brake issue with this car. A completely new brake apparatus on this car from the start of the race, and it all went wrong, so they've gone back to the gear that they were using in practice.
It's usually the way. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And usually you try and do the right thing, put some new componentry on the car, and sometimes with assembly it just doesn't quite get it right. It looked like they were bleeding the brakes at the end of the first lap, so that would say that a bit of air is in the system, and just those small things that can catch you out and hurt you for make a 12-hour day seem like it goes forever.
Garth Duffy is stepping into the BMW. He's brought the drink bottle in. He's ready to go in the 335i. This car won the race back in 2007 in the hands of Gary Holt, Paul Morris and Craig Baird, and then it repeated in 2010 with John Bowe joining Morris and Holt. So it's a car that knows its way around. It's probably done more laps of this track than any other car in the field.
It certainly has done a lot of endurance racing, and BMW, we say they go forever, but sometimes you have the smallest issue that can give you a big drama. Is the Ferrari now trying to get all that Ferrari V8 power down to the ground at the exit of Hell Corner, the run-up Mountain Straight, and you just see as you pop over the hill here, staying to the full right of the circuit. The hump, if you like, is not quite as aggressive on that side of the track, makes it a much more smoother run, especially in the wet. You just see that car just moving around on the blocks, on the wet weather tyre, not having a great amount of grip, and certainly not a lot of confidence in that car.
This is the mobile Porsche, the 65 car from the Kiwi team. Scott O'Donnell, the Aussie Brett Nile and Simon McLennan are the driver lineup. The second in Class B. They don't have the pace of the number 3 car of Tinkler, Johnson and Richards, but they're just staying in the mix and they're running comfortably in the top 10. And if you thought BMWs went all day, Porsches are exactly the same.
These Porsches, it's the Germans, they know how to build endurance race cars. Here we are, we're back to another one, an Audi out in front and doing a very good job. And these manufacturers, Porsche, Audi, BMW, been involved in motorsport for such a long time, and a lot of the racing over in Europe and particularly in Germany, it is about endurance racing. It's these longer races, a 6-hour race, 12-hour race. We know about the 24-hour races at Le Mans and the Nürburgring, and those cars are built for that, and that's why they're so strong here.
BMW's not built for concrete though. The 68 car has stopped on the exit of the elbow, and therefore another BMW, the M5 safety car, will come out onto the circuit. There's a bit of damage
on the rear as well, so I wonder whether that car's actually gone around. And what happens at the exit of Forest Elbow, there's a river runs across the track. I'm wondering whether that BMW driver got caught out.
The Motorsport Services team win the award for busiest team. They're running 4 cars, and every time we look up, there's one in the lane or having a drama on the road. Now this is car number 2, Warren Luff, stepping out. Stepping in is Mark Eddy. He's the reigning Australian GT champion. He's not a professional full-time driver. He does drive regularly in the GT series, but certainly he is the slowest driver of the 3. So how they manage that situation will be really interesting. The knowledge that Warren can give him and Craig can give him on the track conditions is critical.
As we see here, some of the field getting released past the safety car. What the safety car is doing here is they send the safety car out to slow the field down, control the situation, and then they look for the leader. So that Mercedes got held up quite a bit. That's our 3rd place Mercedes. So they got held up. So they're going to need to manage when they pit under the safety car to not go down a lap.
Alan Shepard's BMW, the car he shares with King Booker and Carl Oberhauser in the lane. And of course, these are production cars. They are as you would buy from the showroom floor with just some safety and some minor performance modifications, but largely it is what you can buy is what's being raced.
It's certainly in the Donut King GDR into pit lane, and all the teams using this safety car as an opportunity to come in, refuel the tank, check the tyre pressures, need to do a driver change. Let's get that done under safety car so we can get basically all our servicing done, and hopefully we can get some green racing underway.
Official poncho suppliers of the 12-hour would be doing a roaring parade today, and Motorsport Services team didn't get a chance to sit down and relax.
It rains at pause for those blokes. That's the problem with running 4 cars. When something goes wrong, it seems to go wrong with every single one of them at different times.
RX-7 Mazda, the Jim Pollicina car, heading back out on the circuit. Class I has been the class that nobody wants to win. They've all had dramas. There's only 3 cars in the invitational class, but it is slow to a walking pace at the moment, with Audi number 2 leading, Mercedes number 22nd, and Audi number 1, there it is. He is sitting 3rd overall. Christy Jones, we haven't seen Darryl O'Young behind the wheel yet, but he won't be far away from stepping aboard, and we're hearing from the lane that he will be the guy who will bring them home to the checkered flag.
Basically, they've decided he's their go-to man, so they are preloading Darryl. He'll do well, effectively, they're looking like they'll give him a 3-hour stint to finish the race off, and that's the maximum driver time one driver can do at any one time is 3 hours, and 5 hours in total.
And there must be a 1-hour rest break that the driver takes after they do their 3 hours. So it's a real shuffling act. It's a great crowd that's been in, even though the weather hasn't been too kind. This is the best crowd we've had for a 12-hour in the last couple of years, no doubt. The rise of this race with the GT cars, certainly the exotic cars really do bring the fans out, but there are still a few Holden fans around.
See, they're everywhere, and we love our Holden fans. No Holden products running at the front of this field, but certainly seeing these GT3 cars in action at our greatest racetrack that we have here in Australia. It's a great spectacle, and it's good to see the crowd starting to support this event.
Back on board the Lotus Exeves, Rob Thompson, Christian Clean and Sarah Harley. Back to green flag racing conditions.
You can just look at the advantage that the lead car, in this case Lowndes, has when there's a class car or group of class cars behind, because the outright cars can't pass the queue, if you like, until they get to the control line. The control line's just at the exit of Murray's Corner, but in that time Lowndes can just get a massive jump and gap the field, and got Mark Eddy actually driving that car at the moment, but he's just gapped the field huge. So we've seen that a couple of times. That's the advantage of being the first car.
Now there's nowhere to go, because these production cars are just about 2 and 3 wide as the fast Ferrari and Porsche try to piece their way through.
And then this is also the problem you have with safety car restarts. Look at the spray, the group of the field, they're all together. So that means when the field's together, there's more spray getting flung in the air, and vision becomes a big problem. So 1, getting through the queue, 2, finding your way through the spray cloud, and 3, keeping it off the walls. First lap after a restart's not an easy time.
Here's the Lotus, started from 14th overall on the grid. Remember, the number 1 Audi started from pole position, and that is where it's aiming to be at the end of this race. It's chasing down the Mercedes up in front. Your own Bleekemolen, who, between he and Alan Simonson, they've brought this race alive.
They certainly have, and I think this rain as well certainly evened out the race. Obviously the Ferrari incredibly fast at the start, had some dramas, don't have the speed that the Audis have in the wet. The Mercedes probably trying to race on a fuel economy race and beat the Audis that way, but now the rain's come and it's become a very different race. It's become about calling the right strategy with the right tyres, staying out of trouble. We've seen a fair bit of that already with this rain, and just being there at the end. We're only at hour 5 and 6, so there's a long way to go yet. We need to get through this phase of the race where it's become a little tricky.
And one of the things about this race is, although the field, it's not a massive grid this year. There's 25 cars that have started this race, and I'll tell you what, things have closed up at the front. Just having a look at the shot from Forrest's elbow, this might explain why Mark Eddy at the wheel.
Just a little moment.
Another one.
There's another river that runs across out of the dipper and then through the little right-handed kink after the dipper. There's always a bit of wheel spin, and we see now the Mercedes has taken the opportunity to grab the lead. So at the safety car restart, Mark Eddy had a huge gap over the field, but that's all gone now. It's changed. That little moment at the top of the mountain, I think it may have spooked him a little.
Now, Mark Eddy's racing against guys who race these cars regularly. They are seasoned drivers. This is the replay. This is Bleekemolen putting the move on at the chase to take the lead back. He's taken the lead a few times. He's getting good at passing Audis.
Well, he certainly loves the wet conditions, and we've seen with the Mercedes, they've got very good speed in the changeable conditions, but it looks like now they've got good speed. Say that now, and Audi now passing the Mercedes for the lead.
The 2 German cars fighting it out for the outright honours. We've seen a BMW in the wall. Grant Boyden's in the lane with David Glasson. I'm not sure that you could get away with that on any other weekend at Bathurst.
I'm not sure that emergency services have much luck, as we see Mark Eddy coming out of the chase. Just lost the rear through the little kink and
hasn't hit anything, but he's rolled it backwards
off the track, and there's a gravel trap there.
Yeah, that's a gravel trap. He will be beached. Oh, he's just rolled the back in. He's escaped. Close call for the Audi team.
Pull straight in the pits and buy a lotto ticket. You've got away with that one, because you certainly, you want to get out of the way, but you don't want to back it over a curb and half into a gravel trap. He's lucky to get away with that one. So the last couple of laps with Marchetti, he's been a little spooky, obviously, just taking a bit of time to find himself in the groove and get comfortable. Luffy's thumbs up.
That wasn't a convincing thumbs up, I'll give you the tip. It's the number 1 Audi that leads the way, halfway in the Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour. Still the Nissan, the Subaru, the Astra and the Seat lead the way in the respective classes. Overall, the number 2 Audi has slipped down the leaderboard. It's still in third. The Ferrari fourth. Nathan Tinkler, Stephen Johnson and Steve Richards have worked their way now into 5th overall. They lead the way in Class B, Century Batteries GT3. But Motorsport Services team have got another car in pit lane. I can't keep up.
These guys are certainly going to have a lay down at the end of the day because they've been working flat out and doing a great job servicing all their cars, but just keeps coming at them one after another. So looks like a routine driver change. Filling it up with fuel.
Now this is Peter Hackett passing on some info to the American Brett Curtis, who very experienced in Grand Am racing and GT racing around the world.
I think that's about where the rivers are, where the track's at its worst, what areas of the circuit to look out for.
And you talked about areas of the circuit. At the elbow earlier on in the weekend, Curtis crashed this car. He backed it into the wall and they lost a lot of practice time to get ready for this race day. So no doubt he'll be a little bit nervous because these conditions are completely different. We had great weather earlier on in the weekend.
Certainly, and not a lot of wet running prior to the race, if any at all. So that's going to be new for these guys that are here for the first time. Plenty of experience internationally, but Bathurst in the wet's a whole different kettle of fish.
Now this is number 1. This is the race-leading Audi in the sand. We saw Marchetti all but land in the sand. Now car 1, Jones, he's gone. He's buried.
Now the production Audi R8, it's four-wheel drive. You'd kill it, take anything to have four-wheel drive right at the moment to get out of that gravel trap.
Panic stations at Phoenix Racing. Let's have a look and see how it happened all by himself.
Just lost the rear at Murray's, and we've seen that. We see that in all sorts of racing here in Australian V8 supercars, and now in the GT3 Audi R8 backs its way into the gravel trap. The number 2 Audi will take that opportunity to get in there and fill up with fuel.
And because the 2 cars in the pits, it's not gaining any more margin on car number 1.
That's right.
Oh, no, this is drama. Marchetti's gone to leave. He's taken the refueling hose with him, and there's massive drama here.
Guys, what happened was that the car took off before the refueler had finished. As you can see, there's been a reasonable amount, not a massive amount, but a reasonable amount of fuel dumped down here in pit lane. The fire crews were straight onto it, as was the crew. They've doused it with foam. It's not a fire threat at the moment, but obviously there's a massive amount of damage to the refueling unit, and that's going to be a major issue. Looks like they're going to send Mark out, but the future is grim. How much fuel, how much damage to this fuel unit is there going to be, and is that going to be a problem later on in the day?
Grant, that's really interesting what's unfolded there, because thinking back to the Kmart drama of 10 years ago now, would you believe, the instance there was where the car controller didn't stand in front of the car. I've noticed watching the Audi pit stops this weekend, the car controller's been to the front but to the side of the car. Clearly Marchetti thought, well, there's no one in front of me, it's good to go, when clearly he wasn't.
No, obviously the fuel rig's still attached, and the marshals and fire marshals have done a fantastic job here to obviously neutralise all the petrol that's down in pit lane. And what also happened is that the car 2, Audi, didn't get an advantage on car 1 while it was stuck in the gravel trap. And also the Audi boys now need to rebuild a fuel rig so they can hopefully put some more fuel in the car.
And while that was all happening, the Mercedes has come into the lane. The Seat's finally needed fuel. It's finally needed some diesel.
See, they're not ready. They didn't think this thing's going to go for 12 hours. I'll drive around all day. Finally, the crew gets the fuel rig attached to the car. Hopefully, there's no driver in that one, so I can't drive away. Wow, when it happens here at Bathurst, does it come at you thick and fast?
Who would have thought that both Audis would be in drama at the same time? The car that really stands to benefit is the Mercedes-Benz. Brett Curtis is now behind the wheel. Jeroen Bleekemolen really did turn it on in those slippery conditions a little bit earlier on. They're in the box seat now to take advantage. Let's head to the lane. Grants with Jeroen.
My first stint was on slicks in the wet. Pretty tricky out there, but it was going great. The car was doing very well, and yeah, I could take the lead, so I can't complain.
That was a big overtaking manoeuvre.
I think somehow we just had a little bit more grip. So, and when we've got more grip, it's probably easy to overtake. So, and later on I got overtaken when it was completely wet. You know, then probably they had more grip.
Do you think, Garth, that some people are noticing that we need some international drivers come October on the Gold Coast?
I think the guys are thinking, well, you know, there's this race on the Gold Coast, international drivers. We might come down for a 1,000k race, but look at the state of the Audi pit bay. You would have thought it's a gravel trap with the amount of stuff in there, but obviously they need to service this car as well while it's still under safety car as well as what's going on with the car too, as well as rebuilding a fuel rig, as well as cleaning up the actual pit area.
Now, the question in my mind, remember, we talked about the Greg Murphy incident from 2002. He was given a 5-minute penalty. We get a race restart on track. There must be some form of penalty for Mark Eddy for car 2.
I would have thought so. I think, that's obviously a pretty serious scenario, spilling that much fuel. We don't know exactly, but you would have thought 30 or 40 litres of fuel going down in pit lane. So, pretty serious accident. That's, we've got some precedents there back in 2002 with Murphy and the Kmart team, so we'll just have to wait and see what the stewards decide on that one.
You know, it's a production car when there's a key in the ignition rather than the rocket ship GT cars that run to the start button.
Hey, you got the keys to the race car? We need to start this race in a couple of minutes.
This is number 2, Mark Eddy, who has looked skittish. He's looked really worrying lately. He slipped off the road at the chase. He's had the refuelling drama. There's potentially a penalty hanging over his head. He got in the car when it started to rain, and that's when things have started to come undone.
The important thing here is you need to just settle down. Forget about all that stuff that's happened before. You can't change that. What you need to do is just settle down, get into a rhythm, rebuild your confidence, and get yourself back up to speed. All is not lost. Still on the lead lap. There might be a penalty. We don't know. You just got to forget about that for now. Concentrate on your job.
And remember, earlier we talked about driver time for this race. 12-hour race. The maximum that the drivers can do is 5. So Eddy has to do 2.
We're still down here at the Audi camp at the moment. You can see they're working feverishly on this refuelling rig. They've got new hoses out and ready to pop on. There has been a few concerns. Having a quick chat with race control, they're reviewing both incidents. Now, what do I mean by both incidents? Obviously, Mark Eddy taking off with the fuel rig still connected may incur some type of penalty, but they're also questioning whether car 1 should have been brought in while the crew were out here working in pit lane with fuel, foam and sand down on the track. So they're reviewing both situations and we'll know very shortly. Further to what happened with Mark Eddy, I've been watching the Audi crew do their pit stops. What they do is when the car comes in, they'll have the board up and they'll put the board inside and then come back out, and the controller will stand in front of the car. As he moved away, that's when Mark thought, okay, he stepped out of the way, it's right to go, and stepped on the gas. That's what appeared to happen from where we were.
And that's a great pickup, Grant. That was something that I outlined just a little bit before, and you're right onto it, because that was something that caught my eye earlier on in the race, in the way that it's processes that usually dictate when these things go wrong.
That's right, and so it's just not quite picking up the subtleties of those processes, and that was Mark's first pit stop of the year, of the race this year, and obviously didn't quite pick up on the right process on pit exit.
BMW v Sayat. Who would have thought? Across the top of the mountain. Let's check back in with Grant. He's in the Audi pits with Christopher Meese.
I don't know what happened, but I braked in the same point like I did it at laps before. Or maybe we think that we have a brake cooling and maybe the brake disc in front were too cold, so the rear overlocked and I spun. We had a good pace, I think nearly 30-40 seconds in front of the Mercedes and also 1.5 minutes to our sister car. It is like it is now, but we are still on P2 and we are at the moment the fastest car on track again, so let's see, the race is still 5.5 hours.
They got lucky, didn't they? They didn't drop a lap amazingly, because the number 2 car was busy having its pit stop dramas. The number 20 Mercedes was heading to the lane. They did drop off the lead lap. That's amazing.
Yeah, certainly very lucky to be in the gravel trap for an extended period of time, bring a safety car, get dragged out of the gravel trap and not lose a lap. So very lucky there. This GDR, it'll be loving the wet 4-wheel drive. Doesn't get to run a wet tyre, a full wet tyre, but certainly a lot more grip for them.
This is the car of Tony Alford, who is Mr. Donut King, Peter Lemus and Adam Beachy, who's been such a strong runner in these pink colours in Commodore Cup, which is a one-make series for older model Commodores, which we've seen the likes of Lee Holdsworth come from, so it's a great driver development category. Here is Mark Eddy, reigning Australian GT champion. He raced in a 2009 spec car. This is a 2011 spec car, so certainly a step up from the machine that he usually uses in the BMW out through the grass.
Taking a shortcut through the chase there, down the inside of the curb, and you could actually see Mark was flashing the lights. He saw that happening ahead of him, so well aware of the situation, but you wouldn't expect a BMW to pull itself out of the gravel trap like that.
This is the BMW that hit the fence at the exit of Falcon Elbow earlier on. The Dave Glasson, Dennis Roderick, Aaron Harris car. I'm not sure if they've run BMW roadside assist to get it going.
Well, the car wanted to call it for them, so maybe that's what's got them going. But look at the rain now. Like, this is serious wet, and now it's more about survival than anything else. And we're talking all day about if the rain comes, rivers running across the track. There'll be serious rivers and even a bit of fog starting to roll in now. So you start to think about safety cars and things like that because of the fog.
Now we're hearing from the lane, Garth, this is big. This is big news from race control. Mark Eddy is going to be penalised the infamous Greg Murphy penalty. 5 minutes. I think that's how he did it. Into the lane. No, he's not even coming in the lane. He spun it off again. Through the sand. The news had just come through that he will be held in pit lane for 5 minutes because of the refuelling miscue.
And that's
now
only once he gets there.
Yeah, he
He's
hasn't even got there yet. He hasn't even got there. So this is an additional penalty. The wheels are falling off literally for car 2. He was on his way in.
That's just aquaplaned on him, and Randy went into the gravel trap. Now, that looks pretty bogged in the gravel trap. Yeah, that car is bogged, so he's going to need assistance to get out of there.
If he'd been able to go right backwards through, he would have got a little bit of grass and been able to drive away, but high drama in the last part of this race for the Audi team. Car 1 off the hook, car 2 in the gravel. Now it's managed to get loose and get free.
And great job by the recovery team to get that done under green. So no safety car to retrieve Mark Eddy, but he's now had himself a self-imposed penalty sitting in the gravel trap. Now has to go incur his real penalty, 5 minutes. I wonder if Greg's called up and told him where the nearest Portaloo is, because that's where Murph spent his 5 minutes. So obviously the wheels are falling off the car 2 campaign at the moment. Unfortunate for these guys. They were looking very, very strong.
Now, while the car is here and it's serving this 5 minutes, they cannot work on it. They cannot refuel, they can't change tyres, they can't change driver.
Can't even get the gravel off. You see the gravel on that front splitter. Can't touch the car. So if they feel that their car's full of gravel and they need to actually service it, Mark Eddy has to leave pit lane, go around the track and come back and then service the car. So, you know, they're really copying it at the moment.
Have a look at the visibility in the Matt Griffin Ferrari. Great sound, the high revving V8. Not the purpose that you want your iPhone for, to time your own penalty, but that is what they have to do. So the update is that this car runs second. The Merc is a minute 18 down on car number 1. It's losing ground though. Curtis is not as fast as the Audi. And the drama continues with the Motorsport
That was
Services
one of the
team.
Motorsport Services BMW spinning in front of the other Motorsport Services Porsche. And that would be their worst nightmare.
The BMW 16th overall this time is still ticking, waiting for 5 minutes. It's an eternity.
And there's nothing. See the crew, we can't do anything.
And
There's
Mark
nothing
can't
we can
reach
do.
the door. He cracked the door open, but he couldn't reach it.
And then see the crew member actually doing the right thing. Can I touch the car? Can I actually shut the door for Mark? So thankfully, I think common sense prevailed there. Shut the door, let him go. He's had enough of a penalty this time around, but certainly the guy's not enjoying it.
Say it in the fence at Falcon Elbow.
And that's quite a common occurrence in the wet. A lot of water running down the hill at Forest Elbow. Understeer, front-wheel drive car into the wall. I'd be taking it a little bit easy. Looks like the steering wheel now off centre, so that's Sayat. More trouble for those guys.
7 hours down, and despite their dramas, the Audi number 1 still leads the way. The class is... You would think that the danger of a dark mountain morning would see the race get off to a slow start, but Alan Simonson in the Ferrari didn't seem bothered. The Danes stormed to the lead with furious pace, setting the fastest ever lap in a Bathurst race with a 2-minute 6-second lap. The first pit stop cycled through around the 1 hour mark as teams took on fuel and tyres, but the Ferrari went 1 lap too many, running out of fuel on top of the mountain, losing 2 laps and handing the lead back to last year's winning Audi with young German Christopher Mies at the wheel. Evil Broker's diesel-powered Sayat came to a stop at the 2 hour mark, which saw the BMW M5 safety car come out for what was going to be a busy day. When racing resumed, Jerome Bleekemolen found speed. The first raindrops started to fall. He wrapped up 1 Audi in the Falcon Elbow, moving up to second, and then collected the whole set, passing Lowndes at the cutting, taking the lead for the first time. The third Audi, with Frank Yu at the wheel, brought out our second safety car. It's the first time an Audi R8 has crashed here at the mountain. And despite being under safety car conditions, Phil Alexander crashed out in the RX-7 Mazda. The drama continued on the restart, with the Black Falcon SLS crashing almost immediately. The high hopes of the German team returned to the pits in pieces on a flatbed truck. Back to racing, and the Audi of Lowndes was leading the pack. Bleekemolen again wanted to scrap, with the last surviving Merc taking the lead on the run to Conrad. And then Christer Jones joined in the fight too, to produce the best racing of the day. In scenes replicating a busy autobahn, the Audis took back the lead at over 270 kilometres per hour. And showing good aggression in his first race at Bathurst. Not to be outdone, Lowndes followed the German's lead and took second only a few laps later, flying past the Danes' Mercedes-Benz down Conrad. With the three bunched together across the top of the mountain, Lowndes piled on the pressure on his young teammate. and Yones slipped up at Skyline. The car ran wide, but it was all Lowndes needed to get car number 2 back into the lead of the race. 4 hours in and the rain had finally settled in. Teams taking on wet tyres as the conditions deteriorated. But wets weren't enough to save the last of the Lambos spinning at turn 1 and collecting the inside wall. Wayne Park then announced his retirement from the steering wheel, while the marshals were more worried about catching the other wheels on the circuit. After setting the early pace, the Maranello Motorsport Ferrari called it quits on Mountain Straight. Dominic Farnbacher setting off the onboard fire extinguisher while trying to fix the problem. The Kiwi BMW found the wall at the elbow, bringing a halt to racing. When the green was once again flying, Audi's luck took a turn for the worse, Meese making a rare mistake, spinning out of the lead. Mark Eddy drove out of the pit bay, still hooked to the fuel rig. Fire marshals quick to quell the danger, but car number 2 looked likely to receive a penalty. The brief trip to the gravel trap didn't seem to hurt the Kangaroo Audi. They bounced back to take second just after Reed Park, relegating the Erebus Mercedes driven by American Brett Curtis, who was slowing in the shocking conditions on top of the mountain. Meanwhile, things were getting worse for Mark Eddy. He spun out of the lead near the pit entry, and when the car was finally freed from the gravel trap, they were slammed with a 5-minute penalty for the refuelling drama. The lengthy stop surely had to be trying the patience of even the ever-cheerful Craig Lowndes.
Dubai, Silverstone, Barcelona and the Nürburgring. They're just some of the most famous tracks in the world that host international endurance races. And Ivo Brokers has raced at pretty much all of them.
We try to do as most 24-hour races as possible. Last year we were on the podium in Silverstone as well, also second in class, and in general we were in 10th. The Nürburgring, the Nordschleife, is also one of our favorites. Unfortunately, for a good result, I think the best one we were with 4th. But this year we're going to try again, and Barcelona, of course, 24 hours in Barcelona. But we also even went to Japan a couple of years ago, to the 24 hours of Tokachi. We went up to the podium, but that's also a very nice result.
And now he's brought his diesel-powered Seat up to the mountain to have a go at the Bathurst 12 hour.
Yeah, I was in last year and talked to James O'Brien, and we are very fond of endurance races, of course. And I saw this race and this very special atmosphere, and I thought maybe we could team up together and try to do something together to get to attract more international teams for this race.
Being a production car race, the Armour All 12 Hour is famous for having a wide variety of cars. But this year is the first time we've seen Spanish marque Seat in the race.
And Seat just one of 13 different manufacturers represented in the 26 cars that are due to take the start of this race. The BMW, though, that started with brake problems earlier on in the day, Garth, has got more problems up Mountain Straight.
Yeah, certainly has. Pulled off to just the little escape road that we used to get in the back of the pit area. And just sitting there, obviously can't really do much. Trying to reset some systems. Turn it off, turn it on. Oh, sometimes when you turn them off, they don't turn back on again.
He doesn't want that car to be touched, because if it's touched by an official, he's in drama. Now, we're actually approaching, would you believe it, the 1,000 kilometre mark, which normally in October we'd be pulling up stumps and going home, but we're a long way from the end.
Certainly, and just look how wet it is out there at the moment, and very, very dark. So everyone running the headlights on. We've got the resets all done on the BMW, and now limping around with the hazard lights on. So looks like heading back to pit lane.
I suppose that's the German control alt delete that worked for the Italian Ferrari earlier on.
I think that works in any language. So now see one of the Class B Porsches, speaking of German cars, second in class behind the Tinkler Richards Johnson GT3. This is the 997 Porsche as well. So ex-Cup cars are racing as a GT3 car, and very, very strong car. Perfect for this type of race where you can just run around all day, stay out of trouble.
BMW back to the lane. It's third in class, 14th overall, so they've managed to lift their way back up the leaderboard a little. Now, this is the little VXR Astra with the young guns. Elliot Barber, reigning Ute champ Chris Pither and Scott Pine. They are reeling in the four-wheel drive Subaru, which the Dean Heritage car has got John O'Dowd and Angus Kennard also in the driver lineup. That's number 2. That is Mark Eddy. He's in the wall again.
And didn't look like he had much left time-wise before Lounsey was getting in. Lounsey sitting there with his helmet on, ready to go. We go on board. This is the run down to Reed Park.
He's okay.
Into the Reed Park now. Very, very wet.
McPhillamy next.
Over the hump on entry to McPhillamy. Obviously visibility, a bit of fog around. Going on.
He's making a change.
What are you doing?
He's scrolling through pages on the dash, and he's got it on the... No! He's got it on the curb. And Oh, twice.
Oh, yeah, no, that one, she's over and out for that car. I wouldn't be making adjustments to any of the control systems of the car mid-corner at McPhillamy Park in pouring rain. I mean, a bit of inexperience there. I mean, Lounsey obviously all kitted up, ready to go, and the other teams, the outright teams, the Everest, Mercedes, taking the opportunity for pit lane and pit stop.
And there's Mark Eddy, he's okay. But the Audi challenge has been sliced in half from Phoenix Racing. They're left to car number 1. It has been one heck of a day. Probably shouldn't have got out of bed today.
No, he certainly, poor Mark's had a trying day and it hasn't finished well. So they'll have to put that one behind him and come back next year, try again.
Dean Lilly here assisting the driver change between his co-drivers Rick Newman and James Atkinson. We've seen Dean over the years in V8 as team manager at Greg Murphy Racing. He's done a lot of racing of his own. Now, this is a little device. We saw them rigging this up in an ad break earlier on. They've chopped their broom in half.
That's an anti-fog. That's an anti-fog system. What's Slady doing?
Tim Slade. Now he's had a radio drama. He couldn't hear the team, so hence
changing earplugs, because the earplugs are integral to the radio system. So changing earplugs, you have to take your helmet off to do that, which obviously unfortunate. Now Berto's in pit lane in the Ferrari. Full service, thank you, boys. And we'll be on our way. Slady's off. He's had an earplug change. He's gone. Ferrari refueling. We've got the team. No, they're going to stay with the same wets that they have, and Berto's back on his way as well. So safety car, obviously all the teams taking this opportunity to reset, refuel.
We are in the same lap of Mercedes in front of us.
And that's the update. He knows what he's racing now.
Yeah, that's good information for Berto to have prior to getting restarted after this clean-up for the Mark Eddy, Craig Lowndes, Warren Luff, Audi. It's unfortunate for those guys. They were in with a real shot today and sort of went pear-shaped. They had that drama with the refueling rig, and then poor Mark had a few moments in the wet and certainly put him behind the 8 ball.
So we get a restart, and it's the remaining Audi. Car number 1, Christopher Meese, Darryl O'Young and Christy Ohms leading the way. There is the number 2 car. It's back to pit lane with pretty heavy damage to the 2011 spec R8 LMS. So it becomes a straight fight. Tim Slade is on board the Mercedes-Benz SLS. He is chasing the Audi out in front, but he also has to defend from the Ferrari behind.
That's right. Now, we've seen that the Mercedes has actually been quite speedy in the wet, and Tim Slade, plenty of experience around Bathurst now. Craig Baird in the Ferrari, he's actually told us on camera that the Ferrari's not really liking this wet stuff so much. They're about 6 to 8 seconds a lap off the pace, and that when it wasn't as wet as it is now. So you'd expect that Slade will be able to cover Baird quite comfortably, but the gap from second where Slade is up to the leading Audi is huge. The Audi's had a great restart and easily put a 10-second gap or so on Slade. So really it's just about survival, get through these couple of back markers and just log some laps and stay out of trouble.
And Slade, of course, again driving V8 supercars this year for the Stone Brothers team and James Rosenberg, the Lucky 7 Falcon. He'll team up later in the year with Andrew Thompson for the 1000, but this is the GWS BMW. It has never had that many dramas in all of its 12 hours combined, let alone what it's had today.
So they've reset it, got it going again, and hopefully those guys can have a trouble-free run to the end.
Slade is stalking. He's trying to get to that Audi. He's clearly got the pace of the Ferrari. That's not so much of a concern for him. Remember that he started the race back way, 6:15 a.m. local time in the dark this morning. Craig Baird started this car. He's now behind the wheel of car 33, of course, the reigning and 3-time Carrera Cup champion and the winningest man in Porsche competition around the world.
He's certainly done lots of Porsche racing, hasn't he? And we've been speaking about this GDR, how it had a bit of overheating dramas last year. Well, certainly the cool, rainy conditions will be helping it this year, and four-wheel drive in the wet, best thing to have in if you had to tick an option box, I'll have four-wheel drive. Thank you, sir.
And this car's been really strong in Class C, the Alfa GT4 category, but it's the Simonson Farnbacher Bow Ferrari that is being wheeled away. They are done.
You see on screen now one of the other RX-7s, two RX-7s in the race, one of them out now after crash damage. This one in and out of the pits all day. Jim Policina, one of the drivers, been racing in the Kumo V8 Supercar Series. That's like a third-tier supercar series for older V8 supercars, and having a run around here in a very different type of race car, RX-7 rotary powered.
And the thing is too, Garth, even though they've done minimal laps, they've been in and out of the pits more often than even this car, which has been in quite a few times. Under the rules of this race, there's no 75% completion rate. You simply have to cross the line within 4 minutes of the checkered flag being displayed, so you can't limp around slowly at the end. So if they keep going and they say it falls over, they win their class.
That's right. So Class I has been the class of the limping Mobile. So just got to keep running around. The Seats had their dramas. The Mazdas have both had their dramas. So it's just a matter of who's still running at the end.
Well, this Audi, it's had dramas. It was in the sand. It was buried. It was backwards. Down at STP corner, we thought, wow, race-winning chance might be out the window, but they're back in the game.
Well, certainly when you have a 12-hour race like this and it's heavy competition, you get some weather come in, every car's going to have some dramas. There's going to be something go wrong. It's how you recover from those dramas that determine how strong a day you're going to have.
The Seat's going to Bathurst for lunch.
Did he not read the track map? You turn left at the end of Conrod Straight, not right.
Too busy trying to hear the engine. Does manage to get it going. It's great to have Ivor Brokers and Hank Thiessen and Martin Bailey. He's the Aussie connection in that car, the car that's done a bit of racing all around the world and fresh from the Dubai 24-hour where it's still sporting the battle scars as well from that one.
That's right. That's one of the great things about these endurance racing. You just pack your car up in a crate, send it halfway around the world and go drive around a racetrack for 12 hours, 24 hours, depending on the race. So great to have those guys in town and really epitomise what endurance racing is all about.
Tony Elford and Peter Lemus, part of this driving crew in the Nissan Donut King GTR, they've done plenty of work overseas. They've raced the Nürburgring, they've gone and done Spa. They've done it in an ex-V8 supercar, one of the old Gary Rogers Motorsport
Yeah, one of my old cars. So Mal Rose running that car, and that car's been all around the world. So now running in a GTR, much better car for these conditions.
This is the number 7 Subaru. It leads the way in Class D, the Fuchs Lubricants production car class. It's up against the HSV and the BMW 335i. This is more of what used to be the outright class, really, in the latter years of the 12-hour, where we had production cars before the GT cars came along.
That's right, and WRX is well proven in rally circles, but actually very, very good as a production car or production-based car in these circuit tarmac races as well.
BMW update, still going, still going.
They will keep going. They'll have their dramas, but they will keep going all day. And usually when they stop, it seems to be quite an easy fix to get them going again as well. So very, very tried and true and tested, these BMWs in racing conditions. And as this race was a production-based event, these cars were the car to have and still are from a class category point of view.
Car number 3, the Porsche of Nathan Tinkler, Stephen Richards, Stephen Johnson. It's Stevie J's first time here in a Porsche. He's been to the 12-hour quite a few times now in Falcons with Nathan, with other drivers and the like, but this is something new, but he's actually really enjoying it. You get this predetermined notion of a rear-engine car and how it's going to be. It's great.
They're very well balanced. You know, obviously we're very used to driving front-engine, rear-wheel drive cars, but the Porsche are very well balanced. Obviously had that format for a long time, and it is quite refreshing when you jump in one when you haven't been in one for a long time, just how good they are.
The obligatory HSV shot to keep you happy of how things are travelling here at the mountain. No outright contender for Holden. Now, Holden's never won the 12-hour, but it's been strong in classes, and the HSV GTS is strong. This Merc is still in the game.
And there's something going on here. It looks like the Audi boys limbering up, so you know, there's still plenty of pit stops, still plenty of strategy. It looks like we're in a bit of a lull at the moment while everyone goes through the motions, but there's a race on still here, and I think these Mercedes boys really think they got a shot at it.
They've been much stronger on fuel consumption in this race, and that's where pre-race, I spoke to Peter Hackett, they were very clear that they had made a very early call. That was the fight that they were going to fight today. They weren't going to go blow for blow, outright pace with the Audi and the Ferrari and the like, as the number 1 car peels off and into the lane. And they're going to be very careful from here on in with their car control. Remember that car number 2 had its dramas. The Seat's having more dramas. It's tried going to Bathurst. It's gone to the beach. What's next?
I think it's looking for a gate to get out of the circuit. It can't quite find it. It's tried now at the chase, but certainly, like I said before, great to have those guys back out. And, you know, they're getting some experience, learning their way around the track. There's a lot of rivers as you run down in the braking area of the chase, and it looks like that's what's caught them out. Great thing about when it rains is the gravel tracks become nice and hard, and you can actually just drive straight through them.
I thought he was trying to check in at the hotel down at the chase, but he's going to check in at pit lane.
So clearly these guys have got a drama. We're suggesting a little bit. They've got a braking drama, it looks like. So into the garage to have a look at that.
Not the only ones having a run off down at the chase. This is the second in Class B Porsche, the 65 Mobil 1 car. Scott O'Donnell and Brett Nile and Simon McLennan. Here's car number 7, the Subaru. We're hearing too that the radio's gone on the fritz in this thing. They can't hear the driver can't hear them. I hope they've got a good fuel gauge and it wasn't a Ferrari one. Let's update the classes at the end of hour number 8. It's still Audi leading the way in pedigree, GT3 outright. Porsche, Nissan, Subaru, HSV, Seat. It's like a car yard with all of these different manufacturers. It's the real strength of the 12-hour race. Mercedes-Benz are chasing, Audi are leading, Ferrari 3rd, and the Porsches that are 1st and 2nd in Class B are 4th and 5th overall. Pit Lane's busy. The second car in Class D. This is the HSV, and Garth, mobile repairs required.
Looks like changing a serpentine belt, or one of the belts that runs pretty much all the pumps on the front of the engine. So good thing about when you're racing a HSV, it's a Commodore product. There's plenty of them in the car park, so if you need spares, you just go looking for them.
But under the bonnet, that was Dean Lilly, one of the drivers who's been forced to get out.
That's more of a worry. That's more of a worry.
Could you imagine pulling in this year in October and the crew saying, Garth, fix your own
You just
car?
go fix that, will you? That would be a problem. We'd be in there for a long time.
Grant's in the lane. He can shed some more light on the situation.
Further issues for Dean Lee. He's still under the car, but not putting the fan belt on. Dean, I know you're busy. What's the story?
I chucked the belt off and we've just gone to put the spare belt on and it's the wrong size.
So what are you doing? Is there another one out there?
They're at the back ripping one off a Commodore, I think.
See, I told you. It's not like there's a heap of Mercedes-Benz AMG SLSs in the car park you can go get spares off, but the great thing about the HSV product, there's always something around you can use.
Well, there are 2 spare SLSs sitting here in the paddock, but they're the cars for the opening round of the GT Championship. They don't want to go touching those, but that's great to see. The HSV will get back in the game. This is the Alan Shepard BMW. I think he's missed the pit lane entry.
And now
he's
got
done
a
more
good
than
view
miss.
of it. Yeah,
He's
now
bunkered.
we're in the bunker.
He's done a wing cut from a few years ago.
That was a bit strange. It looked like it was a late decision to pit, so he's turned across the grass and ended up way too late and ended up in the gravel trap.
He's the leader in Class E, STP Production, the little Astra with Scott Pye at the helm. Here's the boys with the HSV. They've been out to the car park. I hope that's not my hire car.
I was going to say, did you have a black Commodore hire car, Aaron?
If I did, I don't now. So they've managed to run the running repair, go and grab a bit off a road car at the back. That's the beauty of this race, of the production car categories. It harks back to the days where, in the early years of the Hardy Ferrari 500, they drive the race cars from Melbourne to Bathurst.
Yeah, certainly, and I wouldn't mind driving one of those AMGs from Melbourne to Bathurst. I reckon you'd get there pretty quickly.
I reckon you might have a co-driver here wanting to come along for the ride. The Audi team, they've been up all day. They are nearly there. There's still a fair way to go. Car number 1 leads the way. They've just had enough, but there's a chink in the armour. The car dropped off the road. It was in the gravel trap. And that usual superiority that we associate with Audi, they are vulnerable. They are not mistake-free. They're not perfect. Now, into the lane, this is the Ferrari from 3rd place. Craig Baird will step out. The Irishman, Matt Griffin, will take over.
And importantly there, they had a fresh set of wets ready to go on the car. So, tough gig for Matt Griffin jumping in the car. Very wet track, cold, wet tyres. Now, they're no tyre warmers, so these tyres will take a good 3 or 4 laps before they fully come up to temperature. They look like they're brand new as well, so that means that the tyre's got a lot of shine on it, mould release we call it. So that's incredibly slippery for the first half of the first lap. So Matt's going to have his hands full for the next 2 or 3 minutes before he gets the car fully comfortable and back up to speed.
The number 1 Audi at the top of the hill, having a little bit of a moment.
These guys are pushing on really hard. I think they really feel that Mercedes is a threat in these wet conditions.
Just putting a lap on the little Lotus, Rob Thompson, Christian Clean and Sarah Harley. This is the second running B-class Porsche that's been really reliable. They haven't had the pace of the Tinkler, Johnson and Richards car. And it's time for the BMW to come back into the lane. They've been there a few times. Boydo's there too with Craig Baird.
Well, Craig Baird, you just hopped out of the Ferrari. What was that stint like for you? It looked pretty interesting.
It was at one point. The worst part was the fog across the top. It was really hard just to see across the top, but, you know, the car's not ideal in the wet, that's for sure. The conditions have worked against us, but, you know, the leaders are so far ahead, and we're probably that far ahead of the guys behind us. We're sort of stuck in no man's land, so it's try and stay out of trouble, and just did a double stint, which is kind of a long way here in the wet. When you're not sort of battling with anyone, you're just in no man's land. So anyway, brought it back, did my job, mate. I'm out for a while.
And don't worry, that's not the Ferrari in the background. That's a spare car that they've brought this weekend to obviously take any parts off that they need.
Don't need to bring a spare HSV. You'll find one somewhere.
And a spare Ferrari and a spare Mercedes. This Porsche's going really, really well. They're 4th overall. Here's the Subaru exiting the lane and rejoining the Dean Herridge, John O'Dowd and Angus Kennard car.
Now we're into this stage of the race where it's a real grind. We've done more than 1,000 Ks. We've done more than the 1,000K Classic that you normally have in October. And you know, everyone's getting tired. We started really early. The drivers were up early. The crews are up even earlier. And it's challenging, mentally so tough racing in the wet like this. Your concentration levels have to be so much higher. Physically, it's much easier because there's less demand on the body, but mentally, this is as tough as it gets. And racing around here for 12 hours, when it looks like around 8 of it will be in the wet, you'll be very, very drained as this race progresses.
Certainly keeping the energy drink companies in business today with such a race like the Armour All Bathurst 12 hour, the GWS Personnel BMW heading back onto the circuit. Yeah, you're right, we're in that stage of the race where everyone's almost treading water, and I don't mean that literally, but...
Well, it is almost literally,
yeah,
but...
it is, but...
Yeah, Beardo was talking about it, you know, we're not close enough to the leaders pace-wise, and we're too far in front of fourth, but this looks like a big problem for the Subaru, and I don't know much about cars, but I know with turbo cars you see a lot of white smoke coming out the back. That usually means the hairdryer or the turbo stopped working.
If there is one good thing, it's at least at pit lane entry, and he doesn't have to do a whole lap spraying the circuit, and the other drivers, I don't think they'd be able to tell the smoke through the spray, but he's managed to get it back. This is a replay on board, exiting the elbow.
Oh, yeah, you can hear the compressor really start in the turbo. The compressor really start to spin up, and you can just hear that first couple of gear changes out of Forest Elbow, everything sounded fine, and then you really got this whining noise. And I reckon if we had a rearward-facing camera, you wouldn't be able to see out of it for white smoke.
Here's the Merc. Let's head down to the lane. Grants with Peter Hackett.
Look, part of a successful 12-hour campaign is being ready for everything, and you know, anything can happen at any time. We've seen that throughout today. It's been really unpredictable. So if I get the call up, Timmy's done a reasonably long stint. He's doing a great job out there. You know, these are really difficult conditions. I was out there in the wet earlier, and you know, we just need to be ready. So I'm ready.
Things aren't ready in the BMW. It is grinding to a halt.
We certainly have put the curse of the commentator on these BMWs. We've been saying how reliable they are, how they just keep going, and unfortunately they've had a bad day as far as reliability goes. But looks like we're back under power again. This is on Mountain Straight, so this is going to be a long lap around to get back to pit lane if we can manage it. But fortunately, it looks like the car's back under power. Maybe turn the key off. Saw the key on the dash there, so maybe just turn the key back on.
I'm not sure if it's as simple as that, but it may be. Now, Scott Pye's out. Elliot Barber
what's going on
is
here?
in. They're just trying to plug
looks like the
in
radio plug,
yeah.
so that's come away from the seat. And good old 200-mile-an-hour tape. You can fix anything with that stuff.
Caution at the chase.
Radio message to Matt Griffin.
Well, yellow flags are out at the cutting.
At the chase.
Now we're talking back at the chase.
We've got safety car board.
And that's the BMW. Beached. We should stop talking about BMWs.
But there's one on the track now. It's the BMW M5 safety car.
One way to guarantee a lead for BMW today. The Audi car number 1 is rowed up behind it. It is the race leader. The little Astra, it's leading the way. Class E, STP production. They're in the top 10 overall. Stunning job from the young guys. But the 27 car, the Alan Shepherd, Keen Booker and Carl Oberhauser car being removed from the sand. You'd be forgiven for thinking that Michelin have turned up here at Bathurst this weekend just to go through the motions, but the fact is that they are serious about this race. In terms of their engineering staff, they've bolstered it. They've got 16 staff members here this weekend, 3 imported from Asia and 3 imported from New Zealand. Just over 1,200 dry and wet weather tyres will be used this weekend. There's 3 different compounds for the various GT cars. There is no doubt about it. Michelin mean business at the mountain.
We support such a race for 2 reasons. The first one, when we sell a racing tyre, it's Michelin policy to follow the tyre, help the team, and bring a technical service and show them that we are behind the tyre. We are not only here to sell racing tyre. Bathurst is a track like we would like to have around the world. It's a fantastic track without any standard like F1. It means this track has a many blind corner on the top, very quick straight line, and it's amazing. But it's important for us to know the layout in order to know how the tyre will be used during the weekend. Fantastic track for sure.
Each car is limited to 10 sets of tyres during the race, so if there's a sprint to the flag, saving a set of boots might not be such a bad idea. And those boots, they'll be wet because that's what's happened at Bathurst. This is a replay of the Subaru popping a turbo. We can get to the bottom of what's going on. Grant Boyden in the lane with one of its drivers, Dean Herridge.
Well, we think it was a turbo. The boys picked that straight away. They've taken the old one off, got the new one back on at the moment. So we're going to have a crack at getting it back together and get back out there. As you can see from the day, anything can happen. So as long as we're out in the mix, you don't know. They're putting the new one on. We just have to make sure everything's okay, get them back out there, No, they do an amazing job, these chaps.
Thanks, Dean. Now for the tech heads out there, let's show you exactly what transpired. Here is the turbo off the car. If you look down in the centre here, you'll see the little fan blade, and usually that's nice and smooth. Obviously a piece has come off, you can see down here, and it's floated around and really just ripped the internals of the turbocharger out.
Lucky that Grant's not put his hand in there. I'd say it's a little bit warm.
It'd be about 900 degrees or something like that. So probably the warmest place to be at Bathurst at the moment, standing next to that turbocharger.
Ferrari heading back out. Been a great run from the Clearwater team. They are on target for a podium result today. And the BMW, I'm going to stop talking about BMWs because we've done them no help all day.
Yeah, just doing a roadside service on this. They've had to retune the traction control, reset the fuel, and clean the windscreen.
I don't know. Well, maybe the BMW roadside assistance was too busy looking after the Kiwi.
It was fixing the other car, but I think what he was saying, that's German for reset. We need to reset them systems and try again. But probably not the best place to pull over at the top of the mountain and do a roadside service, but at least the car's going again, and certainly a trying day for the 28 BMW.
The only thing you didn't get from that roadside stop was a drink and a biscuit or something, but this is pit lane. This is the Lotus. Christian Clean will step out. Car owner Rob Thompson from Queensland will step in. It's only a tiny little car. Lucky Christian's only little. He's
tiny little guy.
Size, doesn't he? Does the crew go to work? And this is a car. Look how small it is. You'd be no chance.
No chance of me ever racing this little Lotus. So I don't think I'd ever be Christian Klein's teammate either. We're not quite the same size. But good to see this WRX STI back on track. It looks like the team have changed that turbo and back into it. So 12-hour racing. That's 2 turbo changes in one race so far. The little Seat had a turbo change, now WRX turbo change. It's great to see the team's ready for all instances and have the spares on hand ready to go.
And usually when it's in a Subaru, it's in the bush somewhere at a rally. So they've got a garage to work in.
These guys have been thinking it's fantastic. We can service a car in a garage.
66 Porsche, the 996 GT3 Cup car, the Bruce Tomlinson, Alan Dippy, Mark Madron car, another one of the Kiwi cars. They have really got, well, they've got 5 cars here of the 25 that have started the race, so they've got a good mixture. They've got a whole lot of fee.
They certainly have. I think they get a group discount for their entry fee, but it's great to have them in town. And this is its sister car, the 997. The previous Porsche we saw was the earlier 996 car, and this car second in Class B. Not quite the same speed as the Class B leader of Steve Richards, Steve Johnson, Nathan Tinkler, but these guys have been going around all day, not really had any dramas, and I'm sure that's part of their race plan. Just drive around all day. The weather's come, we have to back it off a little bit, just survive, and here we are, second in class.
And this is a Kiwi run car, but with 2 Kiwi drivers and an Aussie, so it has to be an Anzac car, because Brett Nile is from WA. Now, pit lane's busy, the BMW's in, that's not a new thing. The Merc is in, Tim Slade will step from the car, Peter Hackett is on standby to take over, and this is a more appropriate place to have a service for the Bimmer.
It is, looks like more of your normal change, as we see now, Slade in the BMW pulls it up in his box.
Yes, Hackett.
See the gull wing door, quite hard. Look at how easy it is to get out for Slade. He jumps out straight out of the gull wing. Peter Hackett jumps in. Tim will help with the belts as the refueling takes place. Need to keep an eye on whether we change tyres here or not.
You would suspect not.
Keep the warm wets tyres, on, and the track's still very wet, so the tyre's actually wearing that much. It's only when the track starts to dry out that the wet tyre will start to wear, and you'll lose a bit of tread depth, and that way the tyre loses its effectiveness in the wet conditions. But when it's this wet, it doesn't wear the tyre much at all.
So let's get the balance on the situation. The Mercedes making it stop. The Audi's about to come around and be effectively a lap up. But they're out of sequence.
They're out of sequence with each other, that's right. So this will play out for a little while, and then the number 1 Audi will have to come back in, and that lap advantage that they have will get eroded. They'll be back on the same lap. So it's a bit like swings and roundabouts at the moment, and really it will depend if there's another safety car that comes in this later stage of the race. That could have a bigger effect on what happens when who's on what lap and what stage of their pit strategy.
These cars here are 4th and 3rd overall. A lot of laps between them. The Porsche just stepping aside with, looks like Stephen Johnson at the helm, and lets the Ferrari charge on by it.
And certainly Stevie J and Richo and Nathan Tinkler in the Porsche have taken a very much just cruise around approach. I would think that you find that Stevie J and Richo in particular could push on a lot harder in that car if they really wanted to, but I think it's more about getting the car to the end. They've got a very substantial lead over their opposition in Class B. They're not going to catch the Class A car, so really just drive around, give Nathan Tinkler, the car owner, a great result, and have a bit of fun together on a rare weekend off in V8 racing.
Peter Hackett is on board the Mercedes-Benz. He is 2nd in the race. They have fought so hard all day to take it up to the Audi team. The Erebus Racing squad have linked up with the Black Falcon team from Germany. and really come to the mountain with 2 cars. They lost one, of course, earlier on. This is the sole survivor. Peter drives regularly in the GT Championship. They're the only team actually to run an SLS outside of Europe. So that's a big pat on the back for the Erebus team and the program that they've put together. They've been bolstering their squad this weekend. Barry Ryan, long-time V8 supercar engineer, working with the team this weekend. And now at the top of the hill, Chris de Jones has to be very, very careful with the lap car.
Just carefully picking his way through the field. Now, this is a critical time. It's not like the Audi can back off here just because they've got more track position after the Mercedes stop. He needs to keep pushing on because if anything happens during this pit sequence, the Mercedes can jump them quite easily. So you need to keep pressing on, but you don't want to take too many risks when you're passing lap cars like that. And those 2 class cars, not the same class, so they're actually trying to pass each other.
Whoops. Porsche down the escape road. And I think it's Stephen Richards at the helm of this car, in fact, at the moment. So it's only a minor mistake. And they are so far in front in Century Battery's GT3 Class B that he could go down the road, have
Maybe
lunch,
he's
come back
heading into town.
To say it's back in the lane. Down Michelin.
Can't tell you if the engine's running or not because it's so quiet we don't really know.
We've almost used that joke up, haven't we?
No, we're in the garage, so obviously a drama for this Class I car. So the 3 Class I cars certainly in and out of the garage all day. There's Richo off into town. That is the road into Bathurst City Centre, but needed to do a U-turn there.
Might have been going to the National Motor Racing Museum as well, but probably mid-race, not a good time. Now, this is the pit change. This is Darryl O'Young, who won the race last year, stepping aboard. The 31-year-old, he was born in Vancouver, Canada, hence the accent. He's actually racing under the Hong Kong flag. Warren Luff can only sit and watch. He's done for the day.
Afternoon off.
And Christopher Meese, well, he's done his job as well.
That's right, so those guys certainly not getting back in the car again. Darryl O'Young looks like he'll bring the number 1 car home for the rest of the race. One of the BMWs in for a refuel and driver change.
We just saw the lead Audi also in pit lane. Grant is with the man who's just stepped out of it.
Yeah, actually it was the real first laps with rain tires here in Bathurst, and for me this is the overall first weekend for me. So actually it works quite well. So I know the tight track from the Nürburgring Nordschleife, and I know the car very well. So yeah, I think it was okay, but it's really difficult if you have a good gap to the second and just keeps the car running around, not too much risk, but not too slow.
Here's the chasing Mercedes. Peter Hackett is losing time, though, to Darryl O'Young. And the Mercedes is just trying to stay in the game. It's on the lead lap, so it's not done with yet. This is the Porsche that sits Class B, 997 Cup car, hence the sequential gearbox. The older model car ran with the H-pattern, the 996. Just sounds good. Stuttgart Stormer, the 3.6 litre, sits in the back. Careful through turn 1.
Very careful delivery of the power.
And up the hill again. Let's have a look at the way they sit. There is 1 hour to go in the Armour All Bathurst 12 hour. The Audi leads the way. No change throughout the classes. The HSV Astra and GTS lead the way in E and D. And the boys in the Seat are still rolling on in total Class I. The Audi leads the way. Ferrari second. The Mercedes is well placed, though, to fight the Ferrari for second. The Porsches are 4th and 5th as we close on in to the end of what's been a long day at the mountain. Final change for the Merc. Hackett is out and Jeroen Bleekemolen has taken over. He's been the foreman in this car. He's been not afraid to race and mix with the Audis. He's going to bring them home.
Certainly, and he was fantastic in these changeable conditions. Now Boydo's in the pit.
When you talk about economy, the Merc's good. Not as good as the Seat, though.
Fantastic little car. These diesel cars, certainly a lot more of them now in motorsport around the world. We know that the Audi and the Peugeot and Le Mans run diesel engines, but this little Seat has been running around. It's had its dramas, but certainly then no one's going to beat them on fuel economy today, that's for sure.
Pit stop for the Clearwater Ferrari. It runs second, but they're in a fight with the Merc for second, really, at the moment. So this will be a change. Mok Weng Sung, the Asian GT champ, will clamber aboard.
And another set of tyres. So we've been sort of noticing that the Audi hasn't changed its wet tyres too much. The Mercedes changed wets a couple of times, but every time this Ferrari's been in pit lane for the last couple of pit stops, another set of wet tyres going on it. So they said they didn't have the grip, but certainly having to keep putting tyres on the car to try and make the speed.
You can see there the straps on the belts. You run those in the V8 supercars as well, just to keep the belts free when the driver's stepping in so you don't sit on them, basically.
Basically, so everything pops out of the way and you jump in with your hands device on. The belts don't get caught underneath your hands device. You just click your belts in, pull them nice and tight, and everything should go back in where they were before the other guy got out before you.
The Porsche number 3, the Class B leader, the Century Batteries GT3 class. They have had a great day. The Hunter Motorsport team. There's Nathan Tinkler set to jump in. Car owner, he races this car in Carrera Cup. Steve Richards steps out, and Nathan's talking about doing a bit more overseas endurance racing. So for the two Stevens, I reckon they've ticked the box today. They've done a good enough job to get the gig.
They certainly have. Now we go on board with Mok Wen Soon, who's just leaving pit lane, and Grant Boyden's got the man who's just jumped out of this Ferrari.
Craig Baird, you just hopped out of the car. Talk us through your final stint.
Mate, it was just go in for an hour, get to my 5-hour mark, and then put Wang and put the boss into the end. So look, we didn't have the car speed to run with the leader. We're sort of on the same lap, but with we're there or thereabouts, but just not quite. We're about 11 or 12 laps ahead of fourth place, and I have to say, Stevie Johnson and Richard have done a good job in tinkering that car to have it so far up.
Nice to see that Craig's wearing his Bundaberg undergear from last year. He didn't get to use it in the 1000.
I might have to call him up, tell him he needs to send that stuff back. But certainly Beardo done a lot of miles around here in V8 supercars, GT cars, and more known for his Porsche driving, but has done a lot of Ferrari work as well.
HSV GDS, the number 53, Rick Newman, Dean Lilly, James Atkinson car. They've been a contender all day. Fuchs Lubricants Production Class D. This is the mobile Porsche. They've been second all day. They must be getting sick of being second, but they've been solid. They've been consistent, and they're on target for a good day.
Certainly are. As we come to the number 1 Audi, who's just about to pass the Clearwater Ferrari, and that's putting a lap down. So Beardo was saying they're there or thereabouts, but not really in the same race, and now going down that lap has really put them out of the chance that they may have had to get onto the top step of the podium.
And Mok Wen Soon is not as fast as Craig or Matt Griffin, who drove the car earlier. The boys in the Subaru, they've got a new turbo on. They're just rolling on around. John O'Dowd, Angus Kennard are co-driving with Dean Herridge this weekend and taking it steady. They just want to make it home and stay out of the way of the big boys, out of the way of the Astra that sneaks on through.
Must say the young guys in that Astra have done a fantastic job. We know that they're here this weekend driving that car to get laps around Mount Panorama, but trying conditions like this in the wet, they're driving that little front-wheel drive car very, very well. Mok
Wen Soon, the Singaporean driver in the Malaysian team Clearwater Ferrari, he was 5th in the Carrera Cup Asia, the Porsche Series in 2010, and he was the Class B champion. He's the reigning Asian GT champion, and it just goes to show that GT3 racing is everywhere around the world, whether it's in Europe or Asia or Oceania or Australasia, whatever you want to call it. This spec of racing is really catching on as the lead car comes in for its final pit stop.
So final pit stop, looks like Darryl O'Young will stay in the car. He hasn't done a lot of miles so far today, so we said earlier that he was potentially their final gun, the gun that they're going to stick in the car for the end of the race, and he's been in there for a while, but I'm sure Audi have done their sums. He's not going to go over the maximum driver limit. Nice and gently into his box. Don't need to make any mistakes here. Clearly the Audi boys have had a few mistakes in the pits today, but nice and routine pit stop going underway here.
The 31-year-old behind the wheel, he's driven for the last 2 years in the World Touring Car Championship in a privateer Chevy Cruze. We know it as a Holden Cruze here, but he's been racing up against the factory team, the Ray Malik Run team. But at the moment, it is all about catching the Audi. The Ferrari is sort of looking like it's going to be third spot, really, because this car's in the dominant position. There goes the Ferrari to sneak its way. So they get a safety car now. That's a big help.
They will. They'll stay on the lead lap. You'd expect Darryl O'Young, probably on this out lap, will catch the Ferrari and put it a lap down again. So then it just becomes a straight-out race between this number 1 Audi and the number 20 AMG SLS Mercedes.
And that's the outright fight, but in the class battles, this is the Nissan. It leads Elf GT4 Class C. They are 6th overall. They've had a very good day. They've raced against the Rob Thompson, Christian Clean, Sarah Harley Lotus. This is the HSV. It leads Class D, the Fuchs Lubricants production car class. The Total Lubricants Invitational class is in the hands of the Say It boys. They just need to keep going and they'll get a trophy.
Fantastic effort by these guys. Remember, they had to change a turbo early. They've been up the escape road a couple of times. A few other dramas in and out of the pits. But it'll just keep going all day. Grant, fantastic fuel economy and good job by these guys. Obviously come from a long way away, and it's great to see that they're on track so far to get a strong result in class.
So in front, Mok Wen Soon just moving out of the way of Darryl O'Young, the race leader in the number 1 Audi, getting to the closing stages. And here is the car that is second. Jeroen Bleekemolen has a margin to make. He won't make the margin on the track. He needs a safety car.
Yes, certainly. And we saw earlier in the day in those changeable conditions that he was fantastic. Very, very good. Really took the challenge up to the lead Audis and even the Ferrari when we found that they probably weren't that strong in those wet conditions. And Bleekemolen was very, very good there.
Mok Win Sun still slipping his way around the mountain. He doesn't have the pace to go with the Merc or the Audi. He's third overall, not under attack from behind, not a threat for the cars in front, looking good for the podium.
Certainly looking good for the podium, as is this car, looking good for the win. They've had their trials and tribulations today, Audi. They certainly weren't the polished performance that we saw last year, but when it counts, looks like they're going to come out on top. Certainly the Mercedes boys are pushing on as much as they can, maybe try and trick the Audi guys back into another mistake, but so far looking good.
STP production, Class E, the boys in the Astra leading the way. They are, would you believe this, 7th overall. They've had a great day. How about these guys? Tinkler, Johnson and Richards, they lead Century Batteries Class B, the GT3 category. The Porsche's not been topped all day in class.
No, done a great job, and you'd expect that with the experience of Stevie Johnson and Stevie Richards, and also Nathan Tinkler, whilst new to motorsport, been around for a long time. Rick Kemp involved with the Mercedes Assault this weekend, and well-known Australian engineer.
And well known for telling some of the worst jokes I've ever heard on the radio today when the safety car was out.
Maybe they just got lost in translation to the international guys, I'm not too sure.
No, I heard them all. They were terrible. The worst jokes and lines you could ever hear of. When it was raining earlier on, he was telling Jerome, don't worry about it, what are you complaining about? This is like this back home, no problem.
I'm sure Jerome probably didn't quite have the same sense of humour at that stage, but seeing on the track at the moment that it's no rain falling and starting to get that dry line come back, and the teams will be thinking, oh, we don't have to make another decision again, do we? We don't have to think about going back to slicks. They just prefer one or the other, and certainly the drivers will be happy just to get this one over and done with.
And watching the lap times too, Garth, there's not been much between the Audi and the Mercedes-Benz. The lap times have really ebbed and flowed dependent on where they've got the lap traffic around the circuit.
Yeah, certainly, and we're now on the run home. It looks like Darryl O'Young's done enough to get the job done. We're on the last lap. Really, he's just got to make it through the elbow here, not kiss the inside wall, get it out nicely onto the run-down Conrod Straight, and we said earlier that the Audi have been pushed this weekend and certainly didn't have it as easy as they did last year, but this car won very, very strong all day. Put up a bit of a fight early to the Ferrari, but certainly have lasted the 12 hours very, very nicely.
He's got a margin of about 1 minute and 20 seconds over Jerome Bleekemolen in the Mercedes-Benz. So for the final time, into the chase. The clock has stopped. We have gone past the 12-hour mark. We are at the end of lap 270. And Audi are going to go back-to-back. It hasn't been without drama, though. They are going to get the job done, and it will be Darryl O'Young who will bring the #1 car through the final turn. Audi are going to conquer the mountain for the 2nd year in a row. Mies, Jones and O'Young win the Armour All Bathurst 12-hour at Mount Panorama. And the Audi crew on the wall, the might of the German team, has got this race again in its hands.
Certainly Audi have put a lot of effort into this race over the last 2 years. A lot of corporate up here at the mountain this weekend, a lot of customers, a lot of product stuff on display as well as the race. So Audi really believe in this event, and they've shown that they want to be part of it, and they want to be part of it forward. And 2 from 2 so far in GT3 spec racing at the 12-hour. They couldn't be happier than that.
But hats off to these guys. Erebus Racing, Black Falcon Racing, they came and challenged Audi. They've given them a race. They stood up and went toe-to-toe with them. They will be second, but they should hold their heads high.
Oh, absolutely. I think Jerome Bleekemolen was man of the match for this race for the international guys. Certainly, first time here in the 12-hour, first time in the wet, having to deal with all those conditions, and really put on a great performance early in the race.
Christopher Mies is now a 2-time Bathurst 12-hour winner. The boys in the Say It are going to make it. They're going to win the Total Lubricants Invitational class. They have come a long, long way, all the way down under. They will finish 166 laps. They'll be 16th overall, but they get to take home a trophy as Bleekemolen comes home. Mercedes-Benz second in their first crack at the 12-hour. Third for Ferrari. Stunning day at the mountain. And this race is only going to get bigger and better.
Oh, certainly, we've seen the amount of GT3 cars that have joined the race this weekend, almost double from last year, and this race will get bigger and bigger. A lot of these international teams will go back and say to their counterparts in Europe and in Asia, hey, you need to be part of Bathurst 12-hour.
They sure do. Here's how the class results were at the end of a long day at the office. Audi, Porsche, Nissan, HSV and Say It. They picked up the class wins in the 6 different classes. In the outright, the Audi and the Mercedes-Benz both completed 270 laps. The Ferrari 2 laps behind on 268. And the Porsche that won Class B was 4th overall, 10 laps clear of the Kiwi Porsche car number 65. the Nissan 6th overall, the Astra 7th, the second of the Kiwi Porsches in 8th, Lotus and HSV rounding out the top 10 on a magic day at Mount Panorama. So the top 3 have gathered in Parc Ferme. It has been one heck of a day. That was a more competitive race this year than we saw last year. 3 different cars in the top 3 overall and Class A positions.
Extremely happy with this result. I think the boys over here deserve most of the credit. They drove really hard all day. We're not that great in the wet, and it was wet most of the race, and we said, you know, we're going to drive conservatively, keep it on the circuit and try to get the finish.
It was great. I drove pretty much close to the maximum driving time, which was great because I want to do as many laps here as possible. We came very close. It wasn't as close as my second place in Daytona, where I lost out only 9 seconds to the win. This was just about a minute, I think, but we'll be back and try to win it.
Chris was going from dry to wet. I mean, everybody had different scenarios, and it was a really tough result.
Well, here they are, the boys. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen, to Phoenix Racing. That is your podium for the 2012 Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour.
And I've got a funny feeling that Christopher Meese is just a little bit excited about his second win in the Armour All Bathurst 12 Hour. Thanks to Garth Town and the whole team. We'll see you in 2013.